Scrutiny Committee and the Growth, Resources and Communities Scrutiny Committee. In the event of an evacuation alarm sound in a continuous sound, all persons should vacate the building by way of the nearest available exit and proceed directly to the assembly point in front of the Town Hall. If the alarm is an intermittent sound, this indicates a lockdown. Attendees should stay in their seats and await further instructions. As per normal rules, if you wish to speak, please ensure that you raise your hand and you'll be invited to address the meeting by the chair. If a vote is required, all votes will be taken via the cards that are on the committee members' desks, unless a recorded vote is requested, which will be taken in the normal way. The Council allows filming and photography at its public meetings. Can I ask, though, that everyone present turns their phones to silent or vibrate while the meeting is taking place? I would remind members that the meeting is being live streamed, so please make sure that when you speak, you are using your microphone. And I will now move on to the first item on the agenda, which is the appointment of chair for this morning's meeting. The chair will be appointed from among the chairs of the committees who are holding the meeting in line with Scrutiny Committee Procedure Rules Section 13. The chairs present this morning are Councillor Shahid and Councillor Skibstead. Can I therefore ask the committees if there are any nominations? Councillor Skibstead.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to nominate Councillor Asif Shahid as Chair, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a member of the committee that would like to second the nomination? Councillor Ormston.
Happy to second.
Thank you. Are there any further nominations? As there are no further nominations, can I ask if any of the committee objects to the nomination of Councillor Shahid as Chair for this meeting? I see no formal objection, so I could therefore ask Councillor Shahid to take position of Chair for this meeting. Thank you.
Good morning all. Thank you very much for attending the meeting today. Thank you members. I would like to also welcome members of the public to our gallery up there. Before we start, I realise today is a very contentious issue. Can you not hear me? Sorry. Strange. Is that any better? Okay. Can anyone sort of speak us out upstairs, please? Right, okay. Should be able to, apparently. Now, I realise today is a very contentious issue and the emotions are running high. We've got a lot to get through today. While I'm not naive to think there won't be any interruptions, could we please keep those down to a minimum? What might happen, any interruptions could cause us delays in the meeting, result in us not hearing a nugget piece of information we need to hear to make our decision. So please do keep those interruptions down to a minimum. If it is high level, I will issue a warning. I'll then issue a second warning. Should I need to issue a third, the gallery will be completely emptied. So thank you very much. Please do bear that in mind. Thank you. I can't even read this. I'll now move to agenda item 2, apologies for absence. Charlotte, are there any apologies, please?
Thank you, Chair. Today we've received apologies from Councillor Geraghty, Councillor Ayres, Councillor Warren, Councillor Ellis and Councillor Hillier. Councillor Wiggin, Councillor Steve Allen, Councillor Rafiq and Councillor Sabir are in attendance as substitutes.
Thank you. Number 3, does the committee have any declarations of interest that are not already published on their register of interests? If you could raise your hands, please.
Student at Ken Stimson Academy.
Thank you, Councillor Bakewell. Any other declarations at all, please? Thank you. Right, thank you members. We now move on to the substantive item for today's meeting. The committee have been asked to consider whether we should accept a call-in of the executive decision Ken Stimson Academisation, July 24, CAB/15. The procedure for the meeting and speaking scheme was published with the additional information pack on Thursday the 1st of August 24. I would like to remind those in attendance that this is the procedure that will be followed and that the allowed speaking time for each section of registered speakers is 12 minutes shared. The committee is asked to remember that we can only discuss the reasons for calling listed on the call-in form and the information related to the decision made. We must decide whether there are grounds to call in the decision and we cannot substitute our view for those of the Cabinet. Is that all clear? Yep. Thank you. I will now move on to agenda item 4. Request to call an executive decision, Ken Stimson Academisation, July 24, CAB 15. Item 4 is request to call in an executive decision, again, as I said before. Please can I invite Councillors John Fox and Christian Hogg to the Speakers' table. Morning, gents. Thank you. You each have 6 minutes to outline your reasons for calling in the decision. Councillor Fox, can I ask you to go first, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. We're here today because Councillor Hogg, Councillor Hare and myself asked for the Cabinet decision on Warrington Fields to be called in. For my part, I did so because Warrington Ward councillors feel that what happened at the Cabinet meeting was a prime example of short-term decision-making and long-term ramifications. We believe the decision taken was wrong on multiple fronts. It was wrong for the community and wrong financially. Not only do we disagree with the decision, we also feel decisions such as this should be completely transparent and democratic, not simply nodded through by Cabinet members of a single political party. This topic is emotionally charged, and rightly so. The decision taken is likely to outlast every person in this room. The people of Warrington and Peterborough should hear a proper debate, and the views of the councillors across all political spectrums should be heard. In September 2021, after the proposed fence of 2.5 football pitches was finally rejected as being an unsuitable area, a public meeting was held at Ken Stimpson School to discuss further proposals. Senior educational officers and others, having consulted with the school, it was agreed that fencing off an area the size of 4 football pitches would be a suitable compromise. Now, some 3 years later, the area has grown from 4 pitches to 8 pitches. Yet we know the school student population has not doubled in size since that public consultation took place. Why now has there been no further public consultation over the size of the land required? And who authorised this unbelievable increase in the size of the area now required? This is not satisfactory to all 3 of the ward councillors, especially as we have been left out of any major decision making or main consultation about this decision. Even though we all voice the same opinion time and time again, Ken Stimpson is possibly one of the smallest secondary schools in the area, but wants the biggest amount of land to be fenced off for sporting activities, larger than any other school, without fully explaining why. This is not acceptable. It has taken away land from the public they have used since the school was first built. As mentioned previously, this is a very emotive issue, and the current decision will not rest quietly. The residents of Warrington require the opportunity to put their side of the debate forward and for their questions to be fully and transparently answered. They were given the opportunity at Cabinet, but there was a total lack of input and discussion from Cabinet members with the officers. This left the public feeling that their questions were not fully answered. The public deserve to have their questions answered, and the decision should be made by all the elected members, not just a select few. If there is a legitimate reason to fence off the equivalent of 8 football pitches, please explain why. Provide us with the facts. However, as things stand, in just 3 years after negotiation with the school and public participation, the agreed size had doubled without notice or robust, transparent debate. The public have a right to know why all of a sudden the school needs 8 pitches and not 4, and why the Cabinet members appeared to be listening to officers but not the community, which was clearly shown by the lack of debate by members. So we respectfully ask the committee to recommend that this decision is looked at again by the Cabinet and properly debated before the Cabinet make their final decision. We also ask this committee to recommend that the equivalent of 4 football pitches is fenced off and nothing more, as per the public consultation back in September 2021. If this recommendation is put forward, I urge the Cabinet to adopt this win-win, and it is a win-win compromise, for the sake of all sides of this debate. Lastly, if possible, and I know there's some issue with this, we would like the decision to be made by the full council, thereby allowing all councillors to debate this matter fully and be given the opportunity to ask direct questions of the officers making the decisions, so a full and transparent debate can be seen and heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fox. Thank you, Councillor Fox. Could you switch your mic off, please? Thank you. Councillor Hogg, can I ask you to speak? Can I remind you, you have a maximum of 6 minutes. You don't need to take it all.
Thank you, Chair, and fellow councillors for hearing this call in. You've already heard from Councillor Fox, and you'll hear from many members of the Warrington community, all of whom are better qualified to speak for the views of local residents. The reason I've called this in was due to the fact that what I saw was a railroaded cabinet decision that paid scant regard to some deeply impressive speeches from members of the public on this subject. There was little interaction or debate from the Cabinet, and it had the feeling that the decision had already been made in a pre-meeting. Our residents deserve better from the Council. There is no point in talking about transparency and respect if it isn't backed up with action. Each and every one of us is elected by our residents to represent them. Our residents expect us to ask the difficult questions and seek the outcomes that benefit all of our city. Now, Save Warrington Fields campaign isn't some NIMBY organisation that is only prepared to accept total cancellation of this fencing of open space provision. They aren't even looking to keep the fenced area restricted to the original asked for 2.5 football pitches. No, they are reasonable people that can see the need for the school to have a fenced off area, just like every other secondary school in Peterborough. However, this area has grown and grown over the extended time that the item has been left unresolved. It has now ballooned to an area of 8 football pitches. They feel, and rightly so in my opinion, that this is excessive and a much more reasonable size of 4 pitches would be an acceptable compromise. Let's look at the costs involved. A fence was purchased for the original scheme of 2.5 pitches at a cost of £60,000. This is now deemed not to be suitable. Nothing to do with a lower fence not needing planning permission, apparently. Now, this new fence is said to cost £80,000 for an area 3 times the size. And I've checked with my 8-year-old grandson, and this simply doesn't add up, especially when you realise that this includes installation. The figure for fencing is more like 47k without the installation. Someone needs to look at the procurement of that original fence. We've been on the hook for all of this cost, and it seems the school has now agreed to pay half. But it still begs the question, is why are we spending our money on this? Because a council officer who no longer works for the council, working for a different chief executive under a different administration, said that the council would cover the cost. And yet this promise was made for a much smaller area, in a different location, and at a time when we weren't reducing funds to such organisations as the Dementia Resource Centre. We are here again facing a substantial budget gap and fast disappearing reserves. We cannot afford to splash out tens of thousands of pounds on these sort of schemes. This whole decision has been a dog's breakfast with scant consultation, and when the people have been allowed to speak, they've been ignored. This needs to be sent back to the Cabinet to look at the decision again from the start. Of course the school needs a secure area for outside sports, but what are its actual needs? How do they compare with other secondary schools in the area? What are the costs involved, and why can't the school fund this, even if it means them paying the council back over a 10-year period? We need to learn from this experience. Proper informed decision making has to come with proper transparency and consultation with all stakeholders. We have to get away from the old ways of doing things. We only have to look at a number of previous council decisions that have left local residents picking up the costs to see that we don't know better, we don't have all the answers. We will only survive with better consultation and cross-party working. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. Can I ask you both to remain seated there, please? We'll now move to statements from other members or members of the public who have registered to speak. Please can I invite Councillor Judy Fox, Sally Weald of Warrington Neighbourhood Council, Andrew Pakes MP, Mr and Mrs Forster and Nairi Ambachin of Save Warrington Fields to the front desk, please. Have you all got a drink or something to keep your palates sorted in case you get dry mouth? You all right with water and stuff, yeah? Cool. Thank you. We'll take each speaker in turn, and you will each have 2 minutes to present your statements. Please be advised that this is not the questioning section of the meeting. Any questions from the committee will come after all the speakers have made their statements. May I ask that you introduce yourself and who you represent before you begin. When you're finished, please stay seated for the questioning segment. Firstly, please can I ask Councillor Judy Fox to make her statement.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for allowing us a little extra time to speak. I really appreciate it. I'm obviously Warrington Ward Councillor, so I'm representing the residents and obviously the ward. I fully support and echo everything that Councillor Fox and Councillor Hogg have said. Having reviewed Ken Stimpson's own policies online, they make reference to ensuring decision-making is in the best interests of the Trust and commands broad public support. This proposal does not have broad public support. Policies also state that contentious transactions are defined of transactions which might give rise to criticism of the Trust by Parliament, the public and the media. How much more criticism do the Trust need? Ken Stimpson clearly aren't abiding to their own policies. This whole debate is not only contentious by their own definition, with current decision is not supported by a high majority of the Warrington public. I understand that the school was made an academy in September 2023, so I respectfully ask when the exact date that the tenancy at will was signed and by whom. This is a question that still needs to be answered in a clear and transparent way. Due to the limited amount of time we all have to speak, I will start to summarise. I fully support the reasons for the call-in and recommend that this goes back to the Cabinet to be fully reviewed again with the full input from ward councillors and residents alike before any final decision is made. In my 20 years as an elected representative for Warrington and knowing the public opinion the way I do, there is only one logical and practical outcome: honour the result of the public consultation in 2021, which was a compromise of 4 fields, not 8. That is all that is needed to be fenced off. This will provide adequate safeguarding for the students of Ken Stimpson.
2 minutes, Councillor.
Sorry?
It's 2 minutes. You're nearly done, yeah?
That's all right. I've just
Is
got
that
a little
okay?
bit more, but yeah.
All right, thank you, Councillor.
Okay,
Please can I invite Sally Weald to make her statement, please?
I am Sally Weald and I am representing Warrington Neighbourhood Council, and we are the residents' representative group in the absence of a parish council. Earlier this year, the community was promised transparency and communication, and the Cabinet meeting had none of this. The speakers there raised many points mentioned, but the officers did not adequately respond to them. And we then cannot believe that there was no doubt on the part of the Cabinet members and led to no questions or debate. The information provided to the Cabinet was inadequate. The items that need to be considered are the dual use of the fields and the legal implications of this. The change of use from dual use that originally needed planning permission for the last 3 years. However, this view was changed in the last few weeks. The lack of community consultation, which was promised as part of that planning permission. The curriculum delivery area changing from 2.5 pitches in 2020, the 4 pitches in 2022, and now the 8 pitches. What has changed in those 4 years, and why haven't the academy plans and aspirations been made public? The lack of an equality and health impact assessment. There was no discussion of any compromise being fully explored. And how far has the academy's
30 seconds remaining.
requirements been challenged? Warrington residents will be living with this decision for 125 years and beyond. There needs to be the confidence and that the deliberations are right and the legal advice is right and the possible compromise is explored with the best long-term outcome achieved for the school and the community. We therefore ask that the Cabinet's decision is reviewed.
Thank you, Ms Ward. Perfect timing. Thank you. May I invite Andrew Pakes MP to make a statement, please?
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. My name is Andrew Pakes and I'm the MP for Peterborough, and thank you for the opportunity to talk to you this morning. This whole saga has gone on for too long. It's not been good for the community, students or school. Now, the issue has been said that it's contentious. I actually think it's relatively simple for the Cabinet. The question is whether a compromise is permissible and whether it is desirable. And on neither counts has the Cabinet been presented with that opportunity. A compromise solution is still possible. And I want to speak in favour of the call-in on 3 grounds: transparency, safeguarding and proportionality. Transparency. This is one of the most confused decisions I have come across in my life, either from local or national government. The Council has not been clear about when decisions were made, by whom or why. The Cabinet nor public have been given the full information, and Judy has talked about some of them. On safeguarding. Safeguarding matters, no one denies that. This is one of the most important issues in this decision. The Council has not provided any evidence as to why students would not be safe with 4 fields fence compared to the whole field. Are the Council saying that no students outside of 4 fields would be safe? Are they saying students should never ever do cross-country running or take part in park run? Because actually young adults do take part in activities outside of fenced-off areas in education. And proportionality. I get that if offered, the school would want the whole of the field. I get they want to develop it. But that is a different question to what the Cabinet should be deciding as to whether students would be safe. We need a proportional response. We always have needed a proportional response. Fencing 4 fields would be enough to give students somewhere safe to do sports and to keep some of the field open to residents. Yet that option was not presented to the Cabinet or assessed. And in supporting the calling, I urge the Cabinet to look at it again and to do that on the basis of the full information that all of us here have been asking for, some of us for up to 5 years.
Lovely. Thank you, Andrew. May I ask Jen Forster to make a statement, please?
I'm a Warrington resident. I'm reading a statement on behalf of another Warrington resident called Claire. I've lived in Warrington for 40 years. My kids had PE lessons on the open fields, and no harm was done to them because they didn't have a fence in place. No evidence has been provided by the school that other children have been harmed. I went to the meeting at the town hall. It was an absolute farce. The decision was obviously made beforehand, and nothing was going to change that decision. The decision makers should hang their heads in shame. I worked at the sports centre when the school and the public had dual use of all outdoor and indoor facilities, and can confirm the outdoor pitches were hardly ever used by the school in wet weather, due to some of the land being too boggy and because of the mess the kids dragged indoors. I doubt a fence will change this. The myth that these poor, vulnerable children have not had access to outdoor sports facilities for years should be dismissed. They did not have access to the field as the headmaster stopped them using it. This was a tool to get the area fenced off. They have, however, had access to a large sports turf area recently refurbished, netball courts, tennis courts and playgrounds within the school grounds. Also extensive facilities at the sports centre: badminton, squash, gymnastics, trampolining, weight room, etc. 2.5 pitches fenced for PE lessons should be enough. How many kids take PE at the same time? And how many PE teachers are employed at the school?
30 seconds.
The only increase in numbers since the original application for 2.5 pitches has been a sixth form, and the school does not have an obligation to provide sports lessons for them. It was mentioned at the Cabinet meeting the Academy has aspirations for the future of the huge expanse they're grabbing. I'm sure they do, but I don't think they'll share the real aspirations with the people of Warrington.
Thank you, Jen. May I invite Tony Forster to make his statement, please?
Thank you. I'm Tony Forster, a local resident in Warrington. I, like many others, object to any fence on Warrington Fields. I believe the safeguarding argument is a smokescreen for a land grab by a greedy academy trust. I don't like the compromise that's proposed in the call-in documents, which is fencing 50% of Area C only, but I can live with it. The academy clearly wants all of this land. It does not need it. The officer's response document for this meeting quotes BB 103 guidance, note it's guidance not regulations, from 2018. That same guidance justified 2.5 pitches in 2020, 4 pitches in 2022. How can the same guidance now justify 8? The officer's document also says the issue of safeguarding is a matter for the school, and if Area C is to be used for educational purposes, the school itself should have the right to determine what area should be fenced. Asserting safeguarding risks isn't enough. Citizens of Peterborough deserve evidence, and they need convincing that the council should pay to fence land for a private company. They have a right to open space they've enjoyed for a generation and a half. In its Section 77 application in April 2024, which was to fence 4 pitches, the council said the area to be enclosed meets the curriculum needs of the school and has been agreed with the head teacher and the governing body. 4 pitches met its needs in April. More than that now. Is she agreed? I want no fence, but the question before this meeting today is whether it's necessary and fair that the academy, previously a community school, should be able to fence all of Area C at our expense. A compromise is agreed by everybody apart from the school and the officers.
Thank you, Tony. Thanks very much. And finally, I invite Mary Ambarchin to make her statement, please.
Thank you. I'm a representative from the 750-strong Save Warrington Fields group. Peterborough comes in for some stick, but for me it's a really special place, and one thing I love is the green open spaces. The Warrington Fields area has saved my mental and physical health more than once. It's a really calm and beautiful spot. So tearing through it and handing it over to a private entity for 125 years needs proper, careful consideration. And I don't reckon that's been done here. The lack of interrogation of the information by the Cabinet at the meeting was quite a shocker. And then the next morning on the radio, Councillor Janice Jones said, we've discussed this in Cabinet Forum meetings, and last night was really about having made that decision, then it's about the local people actually speaking to us. That's not meaningful engagement or consultation. The unequal access to council officers and councillors, advantaging a powerful academy trust, and zero transparency around this. The lack of reference to the emerging Warrington neighbourhood plan, which has defined the tree-lined avenue as an important local view, and the fact that the students do already have access to quite a lot of outdoor fenced PE space. The sudden jump in space being demanded, and whether the new scale of the fence was actually budgeted for. We want to find a compromise that balances the needs of the school and gives residents something they can live with, even Tony. The ward councillors, the neighbouring ward councillors, our new MP, the old MP, the Warrington Neighbourhood Council, the vast majority of local residents are now calling for exactly the same compromise. Fencing no more than 50% of Area C, sometimes talked about as 4 football pitches, with proper community consultation. Please send this back to Cabinet and tell them to compromise. Thank you.
Thank you, Nari, and to all the other speakers also. That concludes the statements from those who have registered to speak in favour of the call-in. Committee, we will now move to questions. Does anyone have any questions for those who have called in the decision or any of the public speakers? Nick Stanford, please.
Thank you. I've got 2 questions, one for Councillor Fox and one for Nairi Ambarchin, so if I could just ask them in order.
Nick, can you ask one question at a time, please? We'll do one at a time and answer them each question, yeah?
Okay, yeah,
Thank you.
I'm just trying to do that. I'm slightly concerned by what Councillor Fox was saying, that ward councillors weren't consulted, because when I look at paragraph 3.4 of the Member Officer Protocol in the Council Constitution, it says that ward councillors should be consulted about matters relevant to their ward, and those comments should be recorded in the Cabinet report. Now, it appears that prior to the 16th of July meeting, there was a change in the size of the field being enclosed. So my question to Councillor Fox is, were you consulted about that change, and were your comments recorded in the Cabinet report?
Thank you for the question. Since September 21 and up until November 23, we were hardly ever consulted. In fact, me and Councillor Fox kept asking from the Cabinet Member for Education then, what is going on about this fence? Because we was told that it would be up within 3 to 4 weeks. And all we got was it was with the Department of Education. When we took over the administration last November, and certain councillors here was part of that, and they will know that I was very, very verbal and very asking questions, what's going on? And there was 2 versions. You can't have 2 versions of the truth. There's only one version of the truth. And we still didn't get to the bottom of what the one version was. So being consulted, it's been very frustrating, that's all I can say.
Thank you, Councillor Fox. Nick, do you want to ask your second question?
Yeah, okay. My second question is to Nairi Ambarkian. It's regarding the actual interview that Councillor Jones did on Radio Cambridgeshire. I've also, because it was mentioned in the call-in, I actually went onto the actual iPlayer and listened to it. I did actually ask for a transcript of that to be made available to the committee, but that request was refused. Could I just ask Nairi, when you heard Councillor Jones say those words about the decision having been made at the Cabinet Policy Forum, can I just ask what conclusions that you drew from that?
I think it reinforced my existing hunch, having sat through the Cabinet meeting, that it definitely wasn't the sort of democracy in action that I was anticipating. It became clear that the hunch I had, that the decision had already been made. It was a little slip up, and Councillor Jones seems really nice, but he said the decision had been made, and then this meeting was just a chance to hear residents. So it felt like the wrong way round to me. So it kind of backed up a hunch that I already had, I guess, was my take.
Thank you, Nairi, and thanks for your question, Nick. Councillor Skipstead.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question for Councillor Hogg. You were talking about the cost involved and the fact that the council at the present time has many issues with finances. So I want to ask you, in your opinion, do you think the school should be paying for the entire fence? Thank you.
Councillor Hogg.
In one word, yes, I do think that the, but you know, I understand that school budgets are tight as anybody else's budget. So you know, if it is, you know, something that they can't pay for, you know, in its entirety straight away, then I think at the very least there should be some sort of payback option where they do it over a period of time to be negotiated.
Thank you, Councillor Hogg. Councillor Skipstead.
Would that be also the money that's already been paid, so would that need to be paid back, in your opinion?
So I believe that the fencing that was previously purchased has now been allocated to a projected Healthwaite school. Whether or not all of that fencing will be used or not, it remains to be, you know, to find out whether or not that's the case. But certainly I believe that it has been reallocated to another job.
Thank you. Councillor Allen, please.
Thank you, Chair. I guess the question is to Councillor Fox as the ward councillor, and to give me an understanding, an overview, can I check whether the land is designated, the land in question is designated public open space, education land or shared use? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fox.
Well, we've been informed that it's for educational purposes only, and that's what we've been told.
Shared use.
Shared use.
Sorry, is it one or the other?
You'll have to ask the officers that, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Right, okay, thank you.
Okay, well, if I can take the chance of asking officers at the moment, it's appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Blake-McQueen, please.
Thank you, Chair. My question, I assume, would be for Judy. You say this has a large amount of public support. Have you had any discussions with the students at the school about what they want and need?
Councillor Fox. Judy Fox, what's for Judy? Yeah.
Thank you for your question. No, I haven't spoken to anybody at the school.
Councillor Fox, you'd like to step in? John Fox, sorry.
I think I can answer that. There was a questionnaire that went out by Ken Stimpson to all the users and parents to find out what they were, and I think it was a high percentage, obviously, was for the fence. Not then it would be four fields, not 8. They haven't done a survey about the 8, but they did a survey about the 4, and obviously the parents and the students are going to want to put a priority on safeguarding, so they would have. It would have been a high, but they did consult with the students and the users and the parents.
Thank you, Councillor Fox. Councillor Blake-McQueen, you want to come back on that?
So, how do I word this? A lot of residents, I assume, children don't go to the school. Most of them go to Arthur Mellows. So, how do they have us? I don't know how to know. I'm gonna.
That's right. It's fine. Thank you. Any further questions at all, please? No? Right, thank you very much. Thank you, councillors and the members of the public who have spoken in favour of the call-in for your time. Please can I ask you to return to your seats. Thank you. Committee, the recommendations on page 3 of the agenda pack asks us to consider the request to call in a decision taken by the Cabinet in respect of the executive decision Ken Stimpson Academisation July 24 CAB 15 as attached at Appendix 1. Does the committee feel that we have done that? Is that a yes? Lovely, thank you very much. Right, we now move to agenda item number 5, a response to the call-in of the executive decision Ken Stimpson Academisation July 24 CAB 15. Please can I invite Cabinet Member Councillor Katie Cole, Executive Director of Children and Young People Services John Gregg, and Service Director Commercial Property and Asset Management Simon Lewis to the Speaker's table to present their response to the call-in. Morning all. Yeah, doing all right. Thank you very much. You'll each have 4 minutes to outline your reasons for making the original decision. Councillor Coles, can I ask you to kick your things off, please? Thank you. Sorry, can I just... Yes, sorry, Charles reminded. It's 12 minutes per section. So if there's 2 speakers, they get 6 minutes each. If there's 6, they get 2 minutes each. Because we've got 3... 12 divided by 3 is 4 minutes, yep. Thank you. Councillor Cole, sorry.
Hello and thank you for all those that have attended this meeting this morning. I welcome the recommendations that are being put forward by this scrutiny committee meeting today, that July 24 CAB 15 comes back to Cabinet for us to consider once again. We welcome the recommendations if this committee puts them forward, and I can assure all those that are listening, all those that are watching this meeting today, that as a Cabinet we are listening. We've taken on board comments and opinions of those that have an interested got an interest in this issue. We will look at this matter again, and we will take on board all of those opinions if we get the opportunity to consider this matter once again.
Thank you, Councillor. Master John Gregg, if you're ready to go, say your piece, please. Thank you.
Good morning. So I've been asked to respond to the call-in today, and in doing so I'd just like to begin by outlining the facts that officers have relied upon in the advice that they've offered to Cabinet. Quite simply, the land in question was acquired for the then local education authority for the purpose of the provision of a school on the land. The public has no interest in the land, which gives them the right to use it, as there is no evidence that the land has been appropriated for any other use. The land therefore is and has been, since it was acquired, educational land. The school has become an academy, and as part of this process, the academy order requires the buildings and land to transfer to the academy on a 125-year lease arrangement. The council is obliged to take reasonable steps to ensure the academisation of the school. The council sought clarity from the DFE regarding the use of the land, and the land was confirmed by the DFE that the entire area, known as Area C, is education land. The DFE then advised that whilst the land was education land, neither the council nor the school needed the consent of the DFE to fence it, and that was a decision for the landowner. The DFE also stated that it would expect the responsible body to follow any published guidance, and this includes, but is not limited to, the Education Act 2002, the Academy Act 2010, the School Premises Regulations 2012, the Area Guidelines for Mainstream Schools, known as BB 103, and the Good Estate Management for Schools, Site Security Guidance. The final point in this section is that the school has been unable to use the land for several years due to concerns for pupil safety. The factors above have led officers to conclude that the land is education land, it should be leased to the academy in line with the academy order, and as the school requires the entire field, in accordance with the guidance on playing field size and the numbers on roll, to ensure the safety of the pupils, it therefore needs to be fenced.
Thank you, John. And Simon, you're not speaking, are you? Okay, thank you. Can I ask you all to remain seated, please? We now have to move to statements from other... Oh, sorry. Apologies. Just a long pause, was it? Apologies.
I'm happy to pause at that point, or if the committee feels it needs further response to the specifics outlined in the report.
If you can carry on with your statement, please. Thank you.
Thank you. So in responding to the specifics outlined in the call-in, alternatives were considered, but as I've outlined in the facts, that led officers to conclude that there wasn't an alternative that was consistent with the relevant legislation and guidelines that we were required to follow. The land in question is designated for education purposes. It is not public open space. And over the last few years, there have been numerous conversations with councillors and ward members, and various attempts have been made to resolve the matter and to reach a compromise which meets the needs of the school and addresses the concerns by members of the public. and that was most recently through the submission of the Section 77 guidance application to the Department for Education in April 23. The matter has been presented at length to two separate Cabinet Policy Forum meetings with the leader, the deputy leader, the Cabinet and Cabinet Member for Children's Services. Alternatives were considered, but the recommendations were made to Cabinet on the basis that the requirements for the school outweighed any other consideration. Just like to say that in considering the requirements around safeguarding, advice was taken on 2 occasions from officers who have expertise in that area, and both confirmed that the circumstances regarding the fencing, they were set out in the in a cabinet report, and highlighted that there have been some concerns, and those concerns did lead to the school withdrawing from the use of the field because it was deemed to be not safe for pupils. I'm happy to pause at that point.
Thank you, John. As I said, Simon doesn't wish to speak, so if I could ask you to remain seated for now, please. We'll now move to statements from other members or members of the public who have registered to speak in favour of the original decision. Please may I invite Damien Wales and Mike Simon to the speakers' table, please. Morning.
Good morning.
Thank you. We'll take each speaker in turn, and you will each have 6 minutes to present your statements. Please be advised this is not the questioning section of the meeting. Any questions from committee will come after all the speakers have made their statements. May I ask you that you introduce yourselves and who you represent before you begin. When you finish, please stay seated for the questioning segment. And may I ask Damien Wales to go first, please?
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Damien Wales, head teacher at Ken Stimson Academy. The one thing I think we can all agree on is this has gone on for too many years, multiple years. In the centre of the dispute and the collateral damage has been the thousands of children without access to their school field. There is a small but vocal voice in some parts of the local community suggesting what is proposed is immoral, is anti-community, and is being played out to feed some private company. And most ludicrous of all, we intend to build houses or somehow profit financially. I've tried to understand that position, but mostly I take offence and treat that position as at best incorrect. I take offence because I consider the role of head teacher to be one of the most important positions within any community. Ken Stimson and the 4 Cs are by definition integral parts of the community. Educating, keeping safe and preparing children to be active citizens could not be more important. We have been advised that Area C is educational land. Since that confirmation, our position has been to fence Area C. Prior to academisation, the Ken Stimson Community School approached the Department for Education to dispose of a portion of Area C, designated educational land, and to redesignate the remainder for public use. This was denied by the Secretary of State, which is where the historic and lingering 4/2.5 pitch argument has come from. I agree the fields are beautiful, but their open access represents a significant negative for any organised sport. Our vision is to maximise the use of the area with huge potential and greatly enhance it. I have approached both local football clubs and Cricket East to get a sense of local interest in formalised sports access, as I am well aware the school won't be using the field 24/7. Both have shown significant interest in using the field. The football club have been investigating the formalised use of Warrington Fields, not Area C, They describe their children of having to go into the trees to use the toilet. They also face constant safeguarding concerns around the things like dogs, glass, and all the other difficulties open access areas create. Cricket East talked to me about a significant lack of grass facilities across the region and in Peterborough in particular. They are looking for a hub in the east to invest in, to drive increased participation, but they are categorically not interested if the field isn't fenced. Free recreational sports and open use for the general public will remain. There would still be significant green space and multiple football pitches available. I attended the meeting in 2019. My personal takeaway that there was no common agreement or understanding of what safeguarding in schools is. The safeguarding measures that are now in place in schools cannot be compared to 10 years ago, never mind 40 years ago. The world has changed. The expectations for schools to safeguard is paramount. As we often say, safeguarding trumps everything. A good example of changing practice is when I started at Ken Stimpson Community School 7 years ago, the public was still able to access Vivacity leisure facilities during the school day. They walked past the children's changing room to the gym. Today, it is almost unimaginable that this could ever have happened in a school. For further clarity, if a member of the public was in school unaccompanied, Ofsted would almost certainly fail the school instantly on safeguarding grounds. The perimeter is currently fenced in its entirety. The reason? The public represents huge potential risk. This fence means nobody can get near our students during the school day. Beyond this step, we still rehearse the lockdown procedure as we need to be prepared in case someone did manage to get on site. The area we have faced significant safeguarding issues has been beyond the school gates. We have regularly had to have police presence due to external concerns. I have personally been involved in several unpleasant interactions, including having to physically involve myself to prevent harm coming to our students. This has included one of those individuals being charged with a fray. All school sites are fenced and secured. The vast majority of school fields are fenced, and I believe those that aren't would be if they were able to do so. We are not requesting a new fence, more an extension to the school fence currently in place. I have heard it suggested that it's the council's decision to fence or not. The decision that has been made is the right one, as there isn't a choice. If you want the children of Ken Stimpson Academy and Warrington to access their school fields. What will the area be used for? The PE curriculum changes and varies throughout the school year. In summer, athletics takes up a huge amount of space, and throughout the winter, the areas used would need to rotate so not to damage the pitches through overuse or due to flooding. Sport fixtures have greatly reduced. Once the field is secured, we would look to reinstate these inter-school fixtures and tournaments and festivals with the city primary and secondary schools. Once the community partners are secured, we would expect the local football club to run weekend fixtures, midweek training from under 6s to under 18s, 13 teams in total, requiring a vast array of pitches of varying sizes. On the cricket side, with enough space, it should be possible to create a senior pitch and additional junior pitches, encouraging mass participation for all ages. Beyond the facilities, sports facilities, we will develop different areas of the field to increase biodiversity through additional planting, which will have obvious benefits for nature. It would also allow multiple other subjects to study in the open environment. There would be the opportunity for our students to spend their break times on the field, rather than the current tarmac areas that are available to them, significantly benefiting their general well-being. I believe the information shared by the council officers clearly outlines...
30 seconds.
30? Was the original decision the correct one. You have heard here from a small proportion of the community. I am a single voice that has thousands of students behind it, and thousands of parents, and tens of thousands of young people who will pass through Ken Stimpson in coming years. I make no apology for being here championing the rights of the children at Ken Stimpson. They don't have a voice and rely on us to make the right decisions for them. The drive for compromise is an argument that pulls on heartstrings and has confused the facts of the debate.
Can you sum up, please? Can you sum up? You had 6 minutes.
Yep. The suggestion to place a fence across the middle of the educational land would in effect be a disposal of educational land, and as we will not access that land, as it is not secured, should this be proposed, we would not accept and would strongly contest with the expected full support from the Department of Education.
Cheers, Damien, thank you. Mike Sandman, may I ask you to make your statement, please?
Good morning. I'm Mike Sandeman. I'm the CEO of the Four Seas Trust, which has recently been involved in academising Ken Stimpson. Like many of you, I've probably enjoyed the Olympics, a fantastic time of bringing us all together with sport that goes beyond football. But over a third of British athletes come from private schools, of which the student population is only 8%. Why this disparity? High quality provision of the right standard. Indeed, the debate over VAT on private schools showed the extent to which private schools carry large states in terms of their provision for sport. If the vote today, this isn't about giving something or compromising, it's about taking something away from young people. And we only heard young people when Councillor Blake Moore-Creed asked the question about young people. Everything else was about us as adults. And too often, we as adults make decisions not on behalf of young people. If we make this decision, we will condemn young people from Ken Stimpson, not just to the second division in terms of sport and provision, but the lower leagues. We've heard the Educational Trust, the 4Cs, sort of likened to some private company. We're an educational trust. Would you like me to continue? Likened to a private company. We are an educational trust. The CEO, myself, is 30 years plus in education as a teacher and a head teacher. I'm not the CEO born and bred. The board is made up of ex-governors from the 2 outstanding schools in Peterborough. They are there for the young people. The idea that we're there to make money, which has been put on Facebook, is crazy. And we've got to make the right choice. We've got to advocate for young people. Already, the council has reneged on agreements that have been made with the 4Cs in terms of taking on the academisation. Already, we're hearing that we're not going to be paying for any part of the fence. This was part of the agreement that led into that. We try to do what's right for young people. But let's be clear. We've already heard the whole area is designated educational land for the young people of Ken Stimpson. That's what we've been told. That's why we're asking for that. We've heard it talked about in football, pitch sizes. Sport's more than football. I'm a West Ham supporter, I know that. My apologies to those of you that are Tottenham and Arsenal, please don't make that part of your voting. In terms of the actual situation, it's gone to the Secretary of State and she's made it clear we cannot dispose of the land, even if we wanted to. And quite right too, because it's young people. The Trust is trying to be clear. It requires, on behalf of children, a properly protected playing field as allocated in the mid-80s. It tried to compromise by agreeing to pick up part of the finances, even though that was not part of the original deal with the local authority on economisation. All I can say is the trustees are clear. If there is a reduction in size of the offer that we can use, that offer cannot be continued because the deal was done in light of bringing the field to young people from September. There are too many young people that have not had the appropriate PE support over the last 5 years. Also, the Trust is clear that no child will be able to use any land outside the secure line of the fence. So any movement of the fence line will mean that land will be useless to the school and to young people. Why? Safeguarding. Again, I've heard on social media and today from Mr. Forster that safeguarding is a red herring, that we're using it as a smokescreen. How can we be saying that with the tragedies that have gone on in the UK over the last few days?
Shame.
Yes, it is. It is a shame. And in terms of that, I find myself looking at this and saying, I don't want to be in a situation where young people are
Can I ask you to pause a moment, please? Thank you. Members of the public, could you please refrain from shouting out while someone's speaking. Thank you. Continue, please.
Thank you. I don't want to be part of something where an interaction with a member of the public, with a dog, leads to a tragedy that none of us want or expect. And that is why schools are in a position where they are fenced. That is what provides the safety. Damien has talked about why we feel the whole school...
30 seconds, please.
Yeah. And I would absolutely concur. This is not a land grab. This is, for 125 years, make it clear that this is young people's land, the legacy for young people. It is a legacy decision, but it's a decision not to revoke something already in place for young people. I urge the council not to take something away from young people just because a high...
Can I say sum up, please?
Yeah, a high volume pressure group wants that. Young people matter. Let's support them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. That concludes the statements from those who have registered to speak in favour of the original decision. Committee, we will now move to questions. Does anyone have any questions for the Cabinet Member Office? Is this question, Councillor Hemraj? Keep your mic on. Mic, please. Councillor Hemraj, first speaker, thank you.
Sorry, it's for the CEO.
It's all five who spoke, well, all four have spoken, five of them. You can ask a question of any of them.
Okay, so it's for the CEO and for Dale. Sorry, I can't remember your name. It's two questions. Why would a compromise would be useless to the school? You state about you wanting 8 size football pitches, and you said that a compromise would be useless to the school. Having less pitches would still give you that ability to play any of the outside sports. Thank you.
Question for you, Mark. And again, could we do one question at a time, please? Thank you.
If half of the field is cut off because of a fence, we will not be able to use the other half of that fence. These young people have been allocated this land so that they can carry out the full PE curriculum, all sports, not just football. A range of pitches is necessary because of the different age ranges, a range of sizes of pitches, athletics, all that we see are part of a full sporting curriculum. I speak as a ex-head teacher of Arthur Mellows, which has that level of land that the DFE requires, the same level of land that the Ken Stimpson has been allocated. Those young people deserve my support, Damien's support, and yes, your support in making sure that land is there for them. That's what it was allocated for in the mid-80s. The fact a fence wasn't put round then, at that point, was a mistake, but the world was a different place. The world is a much more dangerous place right now. We all recognise that, and we are in a situation where we want to make sure young people are actually protected in the way they should be, from threat and perceived threat.
Thanks, Mike. And follow-up, Councillor Hemraj?
It's a bit of a hypothetical question. You're saying you're not willing to compromise, but if there was a possibility to compromise, what would the compromise would be on yourselves?
We feel we've already compromised by using... Would you like me to continue? Is that okay? We feel we've already compromised. This was an agreed deal. The LA would fund the fence for the field. The money that we have indicated, if that is to take place from the Trust, will come from frontline teachers, resources, because it can't come from anywhere else. That is a massive compromise on behalf of something when you believe your word is your bond, to quote Arthur Daly. Not the greatest role model, I agree. But the reality is, I believe my word is my bond, and when I make a commitment, I keep it. That's what the authority did to me, a former group of people, but that's what they did, and that's what they made to the 4 Cs. So that's the compromise in place. I'm not willing to compromise young people and stand there and say, for the next generation, young people will have half the field they should have. Not give them half the field, remove half the field they've already got. There should be 8,000 young people that represent the next 15 years here today, filling that gallery. They're not here because some of them aren't alive yet. Let's be those people that do the right thing for young people.
Thank you, Mike. Councillor Hemraj?
I'd just like to say, a lot of the other schools in Peterborough don't have as big playing fields as what you're asking to in Warrington. You didn't really answer my question. You're not prepared to compromise. I would like to know whether you're prepared to compromise on either 4 pitches, 5 pitches, 6 pitches, 7 pitches, or you want the whole lot. I understand the safeguarding in children. I get it. I understand the fact that children need to play the sports, but we also know that cricket can be played in the summer, football can be played in the winter. So is there any adjustments that you can make to compromise on those playing fields that will keep the residents of Warrington happy, the school happy, and for them to play all forms of sports outside once the field is fenced off? Thank you.
I believe I have answered the question, but I'll try again. We have already compromised in terms of finance. In terms of compromising young people's opportunity to carry out a range of sports to a high level and ensure that Warrington itself receives the opportunity to take part in sport outside school time. No, I don't believe that I would be willing to compromise in that. It will not come to my decision in the end, but am I going to come here and say, okay, I think we could cope with 7 or 8? No. I'm afraid young people deserve, it's their land, it's not my land, it's their land. They already have it allocated. So it's not for me to compromise on their behalf. It's for me to say this is what I believe, and then for other people, yourselves, to decide whether young people deserve your support in terms of that. It can't just be about walking a dog or whatever it might be to that open space, because there is large amounts of space already there. This is educational land for young people to carry out those educational activities that are outside. Damien talked about this. You would be appalled if I allowed people with a dog to walk through the school. The outside area is just an extension. It's an outdoor classroom. That's all it is. And we need that to be as safe, and we need that to be to provide what the DFE believes all schools should have. I have to say I disagree with the secondary schools. I think the vast majority of secondary schools have the area that we're talking about. Certainly I speak for Arthur Mellows, I speak for Manor Drive, a much smaller school that has a much greater area of access. So no, I don't accept the criticism that we're asking for something we shouldn't be on behalf of young people, because young people deserve this for Warrington. This is for Warrington. Somebody talked about a legacy. Absolutely. For the next 125 years, young people deserve the right to the highest quality of sport provision that we can give them. We have an opportunity. Let's seize that opportunity.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor John Fox, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. 2 simple questions. One first to the Director of Education. You said, quote me, or correct me, sorry, should be leased to the school. Should be leased to the school. That's what you actually said. Now, are you still standing by that? Has it been leased to the school yet, or hasn't it? Simple question. Sorry?
John?
And you said, sorry, another question to
Councillor Fox, can you hold a second question, please? Yeah, one at a time.
Okay, so the City Council is required to facilitate the academisation of Ken Stimson School. The Academy Order has gone through. At the time, back in September, there were a few outstanding issues that needed resolving, including the field. At that point, a tenancy of will was implemented on the 1st of September. To conclude this matter, the lease needs to be finalised. We are required to lease the school, lease the field and the buildings to the Academy for 125 years, in line with the Academy Order.
Councillor Fox?
I'm sure Councillor Fox, the other Councillor Fox, will want an answer to her question, I'm sure. To the chairman or the person who's in charge of the Academy, sorry, I forgot it, Mike, a senior moment, as you know, we get them. You actually said it's not your decision. So whose decision is this?
Well, I understand it to be the authority, because they were the people that made the agreement that if... and this all comes back to Ken Stimpson and it being in dire straits educationally in terms of young people. It failed its Ofsted virtually. And the school has come in and we want to make changes. And under Damien's support, with Damien's support as head teacher, we've seen that. And this is part of the next stage. And therefore, that's what we're looking for, and that we're looking for the authority to agree this so that we can get on and deliver young people of Warrington the high-quality education they deserve.
Thank you. Councillor Hogg, please.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. So this is a question for Sir Cole. So I'd like to just say I do take on board that, you know, this decision has been kicked down the road by 2 previous administrations. So I do have a lot of sympathy for this new administration, still getting your feet behind, you know, your portfolios, etc., etc. So, you know, very controversial decision that's been looked at here. But I think it's really important to ask the question, because you were at policy forum, I believe, and then you also at the committee meeting, the cabinet meeting itself, in line with the remarks made on BBC Cambridgeshire by the leader. Do you feel that that this decision was already made at the policy forum, and essentially the cabinet went into the cabinet meeting predetermined on this decision? Because that certainly would be, you know, those comments by the leader would certainly point to that.
Councillor.
Regarding my own input into the discussions at CPF, lots of questions have been asked, lots of officers...
Councillor, can I ask you not to use acronyms, please? CPF, so people know what CPF is.
Policy Forum, thank you. During that meeting, lots of questions were asked, lots of questions were answered by officers. In terms of the decision being made, I don't believe that that was the case. As the person who put forward that motion, I don't think it's called a motion, decision, I wasn't going to ask questions on my own report that I was putting forward. So I wouldn't ask questions over something that has got my name on the top of it. What I will say though, and I've said before, that based on the recommendations of this scrutiny committee today, we are listening, we have taken on board, we are taking on board the views of all residents and the school. I've been a teacher for 24 years. Children are at my heart. I've dealt with safeguarding issues similar to that the head teacher has outlined today. However, we are listening. We will make a decision moving forward if this scrutiny committee brings this matter back to Cabinet, and we will take on board everybody's opinions.
Thank you. Councillor Hogg.
I do have a second question. The second question relates to this kind of use of educational land and the fencing off of educational land. I understand, this is for the Director of Children's and Young People Service, John. So I understand that a number of schools across the PCC area, they have education land. Some of it is fenced off, but not all of it is fenced off. That's quite a normal situation to have. And so when the decision was made to fence off the complete area of this land, did we look at what other schools were provided with, and more importantly, the percentage of educational land that was fenced off versus that wasn't fenced off?
Yeah, thank you. In determining the educational land and the area to be fenced off, we've obviously followed the guidance and the regulations regarding the use of playing fields and schools. I'm not aware of any other education land that's not fenced, but I'd be happy to explore that outside of this meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Ormston, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's a question for Mike. Sorry, Mike. If I understood you correctly, so just for a bit of background, I was a chair of governors last year. The school that I was chair of governors has transitioned into an academy, so I'm aware of this process all too well. It's not the nicest to go through, and a chair of governors role is not the easiest either. Have I understood correctly that you're saying when the academy deal was made in September, it is your understanding that as part of that agreement that it was for the whole of Area C?
You put your mic on, thank you.
Whatever the Secretary of State had designated at that time, and that was in abeyance at that point. The problem...
Mark, can you put your mic a bit closer, please? People are struggling to hear you. Thank you.
I think the problem is that and there's been this question about 4, 8, why has it changed, whatever. The Academy can only really get it, or the Trust can only get involved when it becomes the legal entity. It had no legal standing before September. And I think the 4, or the 2.5 and the 4 were just bad deals for young people, and they shouldn't have been discussed at that point. Certainly if I'd have been involved with the Trust, I'd have been saying, this is not right. Just because you get rid of something doesn't make it right. So I think that was the understanding we had with a previous council, that would be the case, to take the school on and to make it better. So it's beyond the fields, that's about the quality of education.
Thank you, Mike. And I've got a follow-up question, will probably be best placed with Councillor Cole or potentially John. We've heard a lot about the 4 fields, and Mike just alluded to this, and we heard about this is with the, Secretary of State has been involved in this, DFE has been involved in this. Can we have crystal clear today, transparent, final answer? Just 2 points, sorry, Chair. It's not too far apart from each other. The designation of the land, as it currently is, because I don't think Councillor Allen's yet had an answer to that question. And secondly, whose decision is it, whether it's partial or full? Is it at council level or is it with DFE? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cole, would you like to have that? Going 2-pronged on it, yeah? Okay.
Thank you for your question. I'm going to let John Gregg answer this, but I just want to make this point. This has been going on for 5 years. 2 previous administrations have had this issue to deal with and move forward, and they haven't. I don't want to go on, keep saying what I've said before. We are listening, but we will also make decisions when previous administrations have not. In terms of your questions, I'm going to let John answer that.
Yeah, thank you. For clarity, the designation of the land, it's education land. In relation to the decision, regarding the land, the category of land, that decision has been made by the Secretary of State for Education. It's saying it's education land. Can I just clarify the decision you're asking about? Yeah, apologies. I thought we might. Where the fence goes, in essence, who makes the decision where the fence goes, whether it's the entirety of the land or part of the land? So in the response from the Department for Education, the Secretary of State made it clear that the decision for which area of the field is fenced is a matter for the landowner, which is the council. However, as we've heard today, the area is education land. If a partial area of land was to then be fenced, it would by effect mean that the unfenced area would no longer be used for the school, and would mean that we'd effectively be in contravention of the decision that the Secretary of State has made. And that's the thinking that's got us
to today. So as I outlined right at the beginning, the factors that we've taken into account have concluded it's education land. The academy order makes it clear that the local authority is required to lease that to the academy. And subsequently, the guidance on the size of the land that is required, which we've heard about today, requires the entire field. And then in terms of the school being able to use the field, it therefore needs to be fenced. So, you know, it's taken some time because this is a very complicated set of circumstances that lead us to the recommendations that officers put to Cabinet previously.
Thank you. I just felt that was a very important point for context. Chair, will you indulge me one final question? I promise.
Just the last one, Councillor Mustang.
Thank you. Thank you ever so much. Probably one for Mike again. It may well be yourself, head teacher. Is the academy going through the risk protection arrangement, RPA, or is it a commercial insurance? And if the latter, are the commercial insurance currently aware of the discussions taking place?
Yeah, we are a commercial company as a trust. There is a sort of changeover because Kent Simpson obviously was a local authority school, so they're being absorbed, so eventually it will become part of the trust insurance as such. And there has been discussions. Exactly the detail of those discussions hasn't been made because clearly the decision hasn't been made. And that is part of it. There is a great concern over risk, as you're well aware in your other role. And that's certainly part of the discussions we've had with the insurance company.
Thank you. Councillor Allen, please.
Thank you, Chair. And let me just start by saying I do have a great sympathy for the dilemma that we find the head teacher and the representative of the trust putting before us. However, community use does have some relevance in this, and if you'll indulge me, I'm going to read from a briefing note that I received at some stage during this ongoing conversation regarding these fields. So it states in this briefing note, between 1984 and 1998, a community use agreement between the City Council as owner of Area A and the County Council, then owner of B and C, permitted shared use, hear that, shared use by the school and Area C by the public. Whilst this agreement fell away in 1998 when the City Council became owner of areas A, B and C, the spirit of what was permitted remained in place. And I think that's where the argument is with the local community. It has been, whilst the council had some kind of ruling over this, an agreement that allowed dual use. So what we're saying now, the previous arrangements are being overruled by academisation, slam dunk effectively. So the academy now has the total decision on whether they allow use by the community. That's a great shame, because I think that what you really want to establish is good neighbourliness with the community and the school. So I would ask you to rethink, gentlemen from the academy, and indeed our education team. I think we need to look at shared use, or if not, we need to consider access out of school hours to the area. So if I can put those before you, and thank you for indulging me with reading that note. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Can I just confirm what the actual question is there, please? So I think I missed it, if I'm honest with you.
I'm asking whether they would allow access out of school hours and whether they would like the whole field but would take less. That's my question. Thank you.
It's not about whether we take less. It's we would choose to have the correct area for our young people as laid out by the DFE, which is the Site B. I think Damien would speak to the community use in more detail and has laid that out, and I'll ask him to comment on the point you raised with regard to access outside school time.
I think I was trying to take the question from the first part you said about working with the community, and I tried, but maybe failed, to go to length to say that is the forefront of my mind. The bit that I want to stress is the enhancement to the facility. At the moment, they are football pitches. However many you divide that up to, there are loads of football pitches that people go and use. They are not used as much as I would like. I look out the window over the fence and think that's not used very often. What I foresee is the community using it arguably more than we do. At the weekends, we're not there. I'm a parent of 3 boys. I travel all over the county to football pitches where they have multiples and multiples and multiples of fields, the majority of which are fence secured, dogs are not permitted, etc., etc., to provide safe space for that. I've met with many of the people behind me and spoken to them about this. Their children, their grandchildren will come to our school. I want them to access every single possible aspect of sports. That includes things like cross-country that was mentioned a little while ago, within our perimeter. The days of running around the fields are gone. We can't do that. It is a huge shame. But the community use that would be available, I would hope down the line somewhere, would resemble an improvement in the facilities, not having children going to the toilet in the trees because they're having to go onto the facilities that are shared use, to be able to go onto a cricket pitch, and anybody that's played cricket or involved in cricket and even reads the newspapers about the amount of damage, vandalism that goes on to cricket squares, etc., etc., occurs because people can access it too easily. I would like very much that the legacy that we leave in a starting point today is a good-sized area where multiple sports for the school are available, but even more are available for the community because it's in a secure environment where people's children and grandchildren benefit from all the safeguarding things that we have to consider because, as I say, as a community coach myself, I go through all the safeguarding questions that we go through here, and a greater space and an improved space, I truly believe everybody benefits from that. Wholeheartedly, I believe that. And it is not we are taking something away from the community. Fact.
Thank you. Councillor Allen? Yep.
Yes, thank you. The ethos of community schools is long lost because of the changed world we live in. It's a great shame, and it's happened throughout this city and indeed elsewhere. So we have to sort of accept the fact that times have changed. I just want to pin you down when you're talking about use of the area. Are you saying that it will be available to the community out of school hours, or are you saying it will remain fenced and it's yours all the time?
I'm saying the dual use agreement that currently exists with Vivacity for the use of the sports hall, etc., etc. So the current dual use agreement at 5 o'clock ceases to be ours. We down tools, if you like, and hand over to the community who come and use which facility they so choose within the leisure facilities. I think you're trying to ask me two questions there. The dual use agreement that we are working towards, hopefully, will mean that these, I don't know, I don't mind if they're football or cricket, it doesn't worry me too much. A dual use agreement will be with clubs that they have access to the facilities for organised sport that will come at a cost, which I'm assuming is your next question, will be available out of school hours. The fields cannot stand dormant when we're not there. That would be a travesty.
Thank you.
Thank you for that answer. That satisfies me. Whether it satisfies the community or not, I don't know.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Nick Stanford, please.
Yeah, thank you. I've got a couple of questions. The first one I'd like to ask to Councillor Cole, picking up from what Councillor Hogg was asking about Councillor Jones's interview. And I appreciate Councillor Jones is not here, so we can't ask him. It's actually alleged in the call-in papers that the decision was predetermined because of the comments that Councillor Jones had made. Now, I wouldn't go so far because that's a very serious accusation. It would be a legal matter, so it wouldn't be a matter for this committee, and it's very difficult to prove. But so I just wanted to ask you about the impression that was created, because I was actually at the cabinet meeting, and it was certainly commented on by a number of people that there was no discussion amongst the members of the cabinet. And we're all aware the cabinet is a one-party committee. So, does it? I'm actually aware that the council, the cabinet, is going to be reviewing the council constitution, the way the cabinet works. So, would you agree maybe to take away the fact that the impression that was created at that meeting was really unfortunate? And would you look at alternative ways, maybe adopting a different governance model, or even just looking at the way the cabinet actually functions, so that people are clear that the decision is actually being made and that any comments are being taken into account?
Sorry, Nick, can I refer this to the monitor officer, please?
Just sorry, before you answer that question, I think the second part of the question with respect goes out with the issues that are before the Scrutiny Committee. So I don't think Councillor Cole necessarily needs to answer that part now. I mean, certainly take it away and think about it, but perhaps I could just keep us focused on the matters before the Scrutiny Committee, please. Thanks.
Yes, sorry, can I just come back on that? Because I do think it's really important, though, because...
Sorry, Mr Nick Sanford, as the moderator has spoken, that we'll come back to that. Stick to matter in hand, please. Thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to say that the impression that's created by a decision-making process is probably as important as the legality of the decision-making itself.
Thank you for your question. In terms of how the council is made up, we are a cabinet system, and I'm going to refer back to what Neil MacArthur said. That is something that is beyond my decision as to how decisions are made within this council. In terms of the perception during that cabinet meeting, I wouldn't be asking questions of my own report. I put that report forward. So in terms of that cabinet meeting, it was my name at the top of the bill, but this issue has been going on for 5 years. We have been in administration for 8-9 weeks, and this is an issue that we've inherited. Now, as I've said before, we take on board everybody's opinion. We are listening without sounding like a broken record. We welcome this decision to come back to Cabinet, and we will look at all things that are put forward. But as I said, we will make decisions because previous administrations have not.
Okay, I've got a further question for the. I've got a question for either the head teacher or the chairman of the academy. I think it's unfortunate that we've been on both sides. We've been getting a lot of emotive arguments about, this is about the children, this is about the community. I think we as a committee need to look at the hard facts. So. My actual understanding is that whether shared use was a legality or not, that there was in practice use of this area unfenced by the school for a considerable period. So can I just ask, when did the school decide that it was no longer safe to actually use that particular area?
I think it's about 5 years ago. I haven't got the exact date, but it's been going on for 5 or 6 years that we looked at the risk that was there and felt it was too big to go beyond the gate with any other security in place.
Okay, so it was actually quite recently that you actually made that decision, and only 5 years ago. So can I just ask, as a purely factual question, in the period leading up to you reaching that conclusion, how many serious safeguarding incidents had been recorded?
Was there 2 questions there? What was the first bit again?
Well, the question is, at that point, you made a decision that for a considerable number of years, you had been using the playing field without any fence in place. You've actually made a lot of statements about the fact that safeguarding was the reason.
May I just come in, please? If they've not been using the fields, then they can't really record any non-safeguarding issues, because the field, they've not been able to use the field. So I can't see there'd be any data around that anyway.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. What I'm saying is, in the period leading up to them making the decision not to use the field, how many safeguarding incidents were recorded?
I think it depends. Yeah, I'm happy to. I think it depends on your definition of a safeguarding incident. As I tried to outline, safeguarding has changed so much over the years. The decision to remove access to the leisure facilities during the school day happened without recording a whole string of horrible incidents that have occurred. What we did is, as we do daily, hourly review safeguarding as it goes on, we felt at that point we cannot allow the public into the school buildings. We can't let that happen for a perceived risk that may or may not happen. Your question might be right. We could go for the next 100 years and nothing bad ever happens on the field. Happy days. I'd love that to be the case. But while I'm head teacher, categorically, no children will go the other side of a fence where there is a perceived risk of harm to them and the staff, which, as I outlined, I have personally been involved with. I would be not doing my duty of care to children if I permitted that. And I think the question of how many things have happened are irrelevant. One would be too many.
Thank you.
I think I would add to that that there's a national change at that point where Ofsted and all that goes with it were indicating that concerns about safeguarding and keeping young people safe meant that they were expecting a perimeter fence to protect. That at that sort of time was the discussion. And I think nationally we saw that. And for us, safeguarding is a person with a dog walking very, in most cases, in all cases, I'm sure, a dog in a perfectly good way. That cannot be what happens on a day-to-day basis with any school in Peterborough or any school in this country. That's just not what should happen. And that's why we've changed at that point.
Thank you. Councillor Blake-McQueen, please.
My question, when I get to it, is for Damien. I've made notes on it. I want to make a point for all of us in the chamber and the gallery and even the public's sake. There was an incident where on a sports day in 2017...
Councillor Blake-McQueen, can we just get to the question, please, instead of behind it?
The question, will get to it.
Okay. Sooner rather than later, please.
Yep. There was an incident where an ex-student invaded a sports day, intimidated a current student, where physical violence was involved. I know, as I was there and present. Therefore, am I correct in saying and asking, has incidents like this stopped access to the fields?
Yes, it is exactly that, what we're trying to avoid.
Thank you. Councillor Bisbee, please.
Thank you, Chair. A few of my questions have been answered, but there's one more question I would like to ask, and it's in relation to the fence. The commitment that the council gave was to buy a fence, which was done, and it's been in storage. Now the changes that you're on about, are the council now responsible for the changes, so should therefore pay for the fencing? We've already paid once. Do we have to pay twice? Was that in the agreement? Because I don't think it is. Thank you.
John?
Yeah, thank you. So in a side letter to the tenancy will that was put in place at the point of the academy order going through and the establishment of the academy, a commitment was made by the council to fund the fence on the basis of the determining decision by the Secretary of State. So if the decision had come back and it was to fence the compromised proposal, then the council would be liable for that. However, if the Secretary of State determined that the entire field, then the council made a commitment to fence that field. Subsequently, the council has gone back to the Academy Trust, and the Academy Trust have agreed to make a contribution to the fence up to the sum of £40,000.
Thank you. Sorry, can we not have any conversation questions now from the committee, please? Thank you. Councillor Bisbee, do you want to come back on that?
Yes, thank you. So who made the decision to offer paying for another fence? Because that hits our finances. That's a decision that was made without full consent of the council. So therefore, we'd already paid for a fence, which has been in storage. Who was the person who made the decision to give that commitment to fence off the extra area?
It is my understanding that the decision around the fence were made as part of the negotiations between the council and the incoming trust as part of the academisation process. Now, that's not unusual. As in any academy transfer, in accordance with the Academies Act, the local authority is required to act reasonably to facilitate the academisation. So therefore, there are negotiations that take place on a number of different footings as academies are as schools are transferring to become academies. In this case, those negotiations were delegated to the Director for Education, who finalised the arrangement in a letter to the Trust that was sent in August in advance of the excuse me, in advance of the academy order being finalised.
Thank you. One more, Councillor
Sorry,
Digby.
it doesn't answer the question, because my question is, in the original agreement, the fencing was paid for and stored, and that was to fence off what was agreed at the time of the academisation. So it's now changed that they want more fencing that we have to pay for. So what you're saying is part of the academisation is we must fence it. So there was an agreement of how much fencing was required, and that was purchased. Now you're saying that we have to pay for even more fencing.
An amount of fencing was purchased, yes. The commitment that the council made to the Academy Trust was that we would effectively act on and fence on the decision of the Secretary of State.
Thank you. Councillor Ray, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've got, I think, coming down the list in terms of speakers, I've come up with more questions as time's gone on, but I'm happy for you to go to others and come back to me. My first question, which is probably best answered by council officers, is who currently pays to cut and maintain that field? If it's the council, then I'd like to ask why, because why are taxpayers cutting what we're effectively being told is a school field? The reason I ask this is because I'm the Vice Chair of Governors at Leighton Primary and Preschool, where the school's got a large playground and a field. The field is then divided by a fence, some of which is inside the fence and some is outside. And that school is responsible for cutting the entire field because it is designated educational land and therefore it's theirs. Now that's a local authority school. At the minute we have a situation in Warrington where these fields, as far as I'm aware, are maintained by Aragon, as in the entirety of that non-fenced area. So the taxpayers are paying to cut this field, the public are paying to maintain this field, but it doesn't belong to the public. So why are we doing that?
Simon?
I'll have a go at this one. The field is being maintained by Aragon, you're correct. The pitches are booked through Aragon, and the income that's received through the booking helps to cover the cost of the maintenance of the fields. You're absolutely right. When the academy lease...
Can you speak a bit closer to the mic? Yeah.
You're absolutely right. When the academy lease is entered into, that transfers across to Ken Stimpson, and they will be responsible for the field in its entirety, irrespective of the position of the fence. So in effect, we'd be asking if the determinant was a small offence for the academy to look after a field that they have no practical use for.
Thank you. Councillor Ray?
Thank you. Just in response to that, I think it's probably more a historical issue of why have we been doing this the whole time then when, like I say, for other schools, the public pay for something and the public get to use it because they're paying for it in their tax. But I appreciate that. That's history now, and this lease may go through regardless of where the fence is. My second question is one more for Councillor Cole, and it's regarding that Cabinet decision and that Cabinet meeting. As it's been mentioned, this clearly feels predetermined by the Cabinet or by officers, with it being combined with the academisation decision, where originally it did sit as the Warrington Fields decision. It sits purely with one Cabinet member, and that's the member for Children's and Education. Even though the Deputy Leader is responsible for commercial partnerships, property and assets, of which I would say this is an asset. The Cabinet Member for Housing and Communities is responsible for community engagement. The Cabinet Member for Environment and Transport is responsible for open space. And yet none of those decided to speak in the debate. I appreciate your reasons for not, because you were at the top of that head. So why was the transfer of this asset and potential loss of open space firmly put through as your responsibility when this could be looked at by others? It's given the impression that it was only looked at from a safeguarding point of view, not a community point of view, not an open space point of view, not an asset point of view. This was displayed in the Cabinet meeting where the Council Leader refused to allow further public participation and specifically said, "Do you not think there are other people here that want to speak?" He then proceeded to the debate where no one spoke.
Can we get a question, please?
I understand that you make decisions.
Yeah.
The decision.
Thank you.
I understand that you say you make decisions. I completely respect that, and this has gone on for a long time. But the reason we're here today is because a number of people feel it was the wrong decision. If you weren't ready to debate the matter, you should have waited. If you
Get to the
weren't prepared,
question, please.
why did you rush to make a decision if you weren't ready to debate it? I appreciate you make decisions, but why rush it?
I became Cabinet Member 8 weeks ago. This decision has been going on for 5 years. 2 previous Cabinet members have also, for Children's Services, have also had this under their portfolio. in terms, as you mentioned, I wouldn't question my own report. I have been a teacher for a very long time. Safeguarding is paramount. In terms of my other cabinet members and other cabinet decisions, as I've said, we would like this to come back to cabinet. We would like to listen, we are listening, and we would like to have another look at the recommendations put forward by this committee. But I can't say any more than that, I'm afraid.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, cheers. Councillor Skibsted, please. This better be good. You backed me enough.
Okay. So one of the comments made by Mike Sander about this is for the children. I don't deny that young people, it's really important, but I would like to comment that the community also consists of young people. Out in the holiday periods, children are using that field. Like at the moment, we've got school holidays. They can run around and use that field as much as they like. Mothers are out with their children. So it isn't just about the children in the school, it's about all the children and the whole community. And I think we should be listening to all of them. But my question was really about this calculation of how much space you should have. So in 2018, they talked about 2.5 pitches, was it 2019? And that moved up to, started 2.5 up to 4, and now 8. And they've done this through this BB 103 guidelines. Now, these are non-statutory guidelines for outdoor space. They're for guidance, and many of the neighbouring schools don't have this amount of space, including Queen Catherine's, Manor Drive, and you've also used sixth form numbers to calculate the amount of space required, but sixth formers do not have compulsory physical education. So my question is, why is the council determined to ask for the maximum amount of space and claim that this is needed to deliver the curriculum, when clearly this is not the case in many other schools, and particularly when this means disregarding the local community who also have used and wish to continue to use this open land and are willing to come to a sensible compromise? Thank you.
Who would like to say that? You going for it, Mike?
Yeah, fine.
Can I just get close to the mic, please? Thank you.
I listened to all that, and my worry is that it isn't a minimum. This is the standard it sets out that we should deliver to young people, and I do believe young people haven't been heard here because, unfortunately, they're not here to be able to do that, and somebody has to speak for them, and that's what we believe we're doing. In terms of access, I believe you're absolutely right. Young people should be on during the summer period in organised sport, in organised activity, in high-quality provision for our young people. And it's that we are looking to do. And that can only happen if there is the correct safeguarding and there is the correct area. We're risking taking away something from young people that they already have. And that's why we feel this is the right size for this school. I disagree with your point about there are schools with much younger. You mentioned Manor Drive, that's just not the case. I can speak with great knowledge on that since they're part of our trust. And secondary schools, on the whole in Peterborough, are well provided for. I can't speak with the greatest of knowledge about all primaries, but I know many primaries have similar numbers. The formula is there. It's saying this is the size. That's what we believe we're fighting for on behalf of the community and young people. Because I agree, they are one and the same in certain cases, and I recognise that certain adults will disagree with that, and I understand that and respect their right to do that. But somebody has to fight on behalf of the young people in schools where they are for the vast majority of the year.
Thank you. Before you come back, Councillor Skipstead, can we, once we've finished the questions, we are going to... Oh, John, go first and I'll say what I want to say.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to respond to Councillor Skipstead's question regarding Queen Catherine and the BB 103 guidance. So when we take account of the BB 103 guidance, we are required to take account of the sixth form numbers in the formula. So they are right that they are included, because it's not just about PE space, it's about overall space within the school. In the specifics regarding that school, you'll be aware that because of the shortage of playing field space, they utilise a remote area for some sport, with children having to be transported there. In fact, there's some 17,000 square metres short, according to the BB 103 formula. But the exceptional circumstances come into play in respect of that school because the site is already constrained by the developed areas surrounding it, and that means that there's no further scope for the school to develop the to meet the additional 17,000 square metres that it is short. So that hopefully answers your question in relation to that school. And I concur with what Mike said about the it's not an amount, it's a minimum guidance that's required.
Thanks, John. Before you come back, Councillor Simpson, may I just ask members, once these questions are finished in here, we're having a debate about this, where you'll have the opportunity to make your statements. So can we just stick to the questions for now? We'll do the debating later. Thank you. Councillor Skipstead.
Okay, thank you for your responses. I just want to know why it's changed from they had the same guidelines back in 2018, and at that point 2.5 pitches was enough, and now it's gone to 8. So I didn't use the word minimum, but it seems to have what they are saying you need has gone up. And yeah, that's my question. Thank you.
That was just a poor decision by the school at that point.
Okay, thank you.
I can't say it anymore. I've said it 2 or 3 times now. If I had been head teacher or been involved in a legal sense, there would not have been an offer of 2.5 pitches. There would not have been an offer of 4 pitches. Both of those two are well below what the young people of Ken Stimpson deserve and should. I can't speak for head teachers, governing bodies before I had any legal, or the trust had any legal bearing on the school, but the Four Seas Trust would never have entertained a discussion about that particular area if it had anything to say in 2018, 2019.
Thank you. Councillor Hemraj, please. Make it snappy, yeah? You've had 3 already.
Two are for Mike and Damien, one's for John and one is for Simon.
One at a time, yeah?
Yep, so Mike and Damien, had the fence been put up in 2021 and it would probably have been 4 pitches, would you still provided the sport provision that you have already stated? And on the back of Councillor Allen's question, once the decision is made and the facilities are used for the community out of hours, will there be charges for those clubs? And if there are charges for those clubs, where will that money go into? One for John, has the lease...
One at a time, yeah. Can someone answer that first one, please?
I didn't catch the last part of what you said. I got most of it on the first question.
So the charges for... Will there be charges
no,
for...
the first question you asked, there was a bit at the end that you asked, would we still... And I didn't catch quite what that was.
Would you still have the same provision that you stated if you needed the 8 football pitches?
Before you answer the question, Mike, we're going to have a break at 12 o'clock, so if you can hold till then, I'll give it Andy.
Without the vision that we have, Damien has, for young people and the community of Warrington could not be delivered with 2.5 or 4 pitches. Therefore, we would have to make do if that was the situation. And we will have to make do whatever the situation, because young people are not going away. The shame of it will be is that young people will not be able to access the full extent of what they should in terms of education in the widest sense if the land that was allocated to them in the mid-80s is not available to them because of those safeguarding issues.
Second question.
Once the use is given to the community after 5 p.m. and weekends, will there be charges for those community groups? And if so, what pocket will those funds go? Will that go back to the council or to the school? Thank you.
Who likes Simon?
Yeah, I'll take that one. Because the fields will be demised under the lease to the school, it'll be their responsibility for maintenance, and therefore any charges that they choose to levy, and I suspect that they will, that income will come to the school, but under the community use agreement drafts that we've already set out, there will be caps on the amount that they can charge. So it's not the land of milk and honey for them to make storming profits, it's for them to cover reasonable costs in accordance with other charges that are in and around the city centre.
Nothing could be further from our minds But if money is brought in, it will be used to maintain and hopefully improve the facility. That is the commitment as it should be. It should not be about making a profit that can be used elsewhere. AMVC, under my leadership, had a similar thing with its AstroTurf. It pushes the money back into the AstroTurf that it makes on that.
Thank you. Question 3.
One for John. Has the lease already been signed? And by whom, if it has been signed?
Yeah, I think I may have already answered that, but just for the avoidance of doubt, the current arrangement is the tenancy will remains in place. The lease will be signed when all matters are concluded.
Thank you. Final question, Councillor Hemraj.
And the last one for Simon. If the school does get the 8 football pitches, how much space would be left for Warrington Fields? Thank you.
So that's set out in the cabinet paper in the diagrams. Everybody talks about areas A, B and C, and you can clearly see the areas in question. There was a comment earlier around the trees and the footpaths. The fencing that is proposed is 3 metres set back from the trees. So there is the remainder of the areas available for the school. The footpath around the outside remains available. The trees hopefully unaffected. But if you refer to the cabinet paper, the area C is quite clearly set out as to what will be allocated.
No, not this time. Can we take Councillor Ormston's question before we break, please?
No pressure then, thank you. I don't know who's best placed to take this question, so it's a bit of an open one, sorry. My understanding is the people of Warrington were promised that this would go through planning because of the fence height at that time. That really mattered to people, and I think it's a really important point. So I really want to understand, when did the fence change, the height of the fence change, who made that decision, and why did they make that decision? Because it really matters from a planning point of view.
Would you like to take that? Simon?
I'll have an attempt at that one. The original allocation and the original land set aside actually required planning for a change of use on that land because it wasn't designated as education space. When we transferred and subsequently looked at what we now know as Area C, the advice that we had at the time was that you don't need planning to change the you don't need planning to put the fence up, but planning is required for the regularisation of the use. Subsequent to that, and the pause that was requested by Councillor Farouk and further investigations, the advice that we have now from our Director of Planning and the then interim Director of Legal is that planning is not required for that change of use, which is it's set out in the Cabinet report. But that's how we've got to the position that we're in.
Okay, but my understanding is, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the size of the fence has, from what was originally purchased, has now changed, which has meant that it now no longer requires planning, whereas previously planning would have been applied to the erection of the fence.
The planning for the erection of the fence was part of the original application, and that intention was for particularly and specifically for the change of designation on the land. Wrapping the fence in was a side issue. Any fence up to 2 metres does not require planning permission in itself.
Thank you. And then this is my final question. I appreciate that we're on it. We should be within the time, Chair. Thank you. Greg, you mentioned a side letter in regards to the fence, building on Councillor Bisbee's point. Did the Cabinet see this side letter? Was it published? It could be an oversight on my part. I do not ever recall seeing this so-called side letter. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your question. To the best of my recollection, I don't believe that we have shared the letter, but I don't believe that there have been any reasons why that letter couldn't be shared.
Yeah, anything further, Councillor Wilson? Right, we are virtually on 12 o'clock, so we're taking a break now. Could I ask you to be back in the chambers by 12:15? We will start prompt on time then. Thank you. Who's missing? Apologies for the delay, just waiting for a couple more councillors to return. Councillor Khan and Councillor Sabia. And Councillor Fareed. Okay, thank you. We'll make a start, they're on their way up. We have a few more questions, ladies. Just need to remind you that this meeting is 4 hours long, so come 2:15, we need to finish. Now, the questions coming up, could they be on new topics? If there's something that we've gone over already, fence, etc., can we scrap them for now, move on to some new topics, get some new answers? The sooner we finish questions, the sooner we get into debate. Is that okay? Thank you all. Next question we have is from Nick Sanford.
Thank you. My question's one I've already raised before, but I actually need to ask it to the decision makers, because in Councillor Fox's comments, he was saying that he was not consulted specifically about the changes to the area to be fenced in that was contained within the Cabinet report on the 16th of July. And so if Councillor Fox was not consulted, that is clearly a breach of procedure.
Can you get to the question, please, Nick?
I'm getting to the question. The question is, was Councillor Fox specifically consulted regarding that report? And if he was consulted, did he make any comments? And were those comments contained within the report on the 16th of July?
Who's... John? No, you can't, Councillor Fox, because it's now this part.
Yeah, thank you. To the best of my recollection, Councillor Fox was present at a meeting where this report was published, where it was discussed. At which point you advised that you'd be on holiday for the cabinet meeting. My recollection.
Can we leave this for...
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Next question, please. Councillor Wiggin, please.
Come back on that. The point I'm making is the Constitution requires that ward councillors are consulted and that their comments be recorded. So was Councillor Fox consulted and were his comments recorded?
For clarity, John, Councillor Fox, I'll let you speak, John Fox.
Yeah, are you saying just before we went to Portugal on holiday, which was only about 3 weeks ago? Because we gave a written report.
My understanding of my understanding of Nick's question is, were ward councillors consulted? My answer is, I recall a meeting prior to going on holiday where the 3 ward councillors were present and were briefed. At that point, you said you were going on holiday, and it was agreed that Councillor Hillier would speak on your behalf.
That was about 5 weeks ago. I mean, and we told you we was on holiday at that meeting, but we would have to put in a written report to Cabinet, which we did. And that was the only consultation we had. The only other consultation prior to that was soon after 21, when the Cabinet Member for Education approached myself, Councillor Fox and Councillor Lane individually and said, and this is about, I don't know, a few weeks after the decision to do 4 fields, after the consultation, and we were asked then if we would be happy if they fenced off the whole field, and we all 3 of us said no.
Very briefly, because we do need to move on. Thanks, John. Put your mic on, please, John.
Apologies. So just looking at my records here, again, there were meetings on the 7th of February and the 14th of February, and again, from recollection, I recall a meeting taking place in one of the meeting rooms in this very building that included yourself and Councillor Farouk and Councillor John Howard from memory. That was prior to the local election of this year.
Okay, thank you. Can we just move on now, because it's kind of a bit of a he said, she said kind of scenario. Councillor Wiggin, please.
Thank you, Chair. Earlier on, there was mention about the Secretary of State's decision that the whole area is educational land. My question is, would there be any consequences to the council, either legal or financial, were the council to go against that decision and choose to only fence off part of the land rather than the whole of Area C?
John?
I don't think I can answer that with a definitive yes or no. But what I would say is my understanding from most recent conversations would be that if that were the case, that the Academy Trust would refer that back to the Department for Education.
Thank you. Councillor Wiggin, you need to come back on that. You're okay. Before we go any further, Neil McCarthy, the monitoring officer, would like to step in regarding the point about the Constitution.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I hesitate before intervening, but just for the clarity for the benefit of the committee, what the Constitution said is ward councillors should be consulted about matters specific to their ward. Comments submitted by them are included in the Cabinet report or tabled at the meeting. If they attend, the Chair may ask them to put their views briefly to the Cabinet meeting. So I just wanted to be clear that that's what the Constitution actually says. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Councillor Allen, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for allowing me to come with another question. And I'll keep it short because taking a lot of time to go around lots of circles. It seems to me that academisation is in train, slam dunk. The school is going to become an academy. So what influence does Peterborough City Council have over the decision we are going round the houses to make? Could I ask that question, please?
Apologies. Could I have the question repeated?
This seems to be a habit with you, Councillor Allen.
Academisation is in train and going ahead. It's a given. It's slam dunk. So what influence does Peterborough City Council have over the decision on the use of the area known as C? So if we say you can't fence it, the Academy won't want to have the academisation of the school, no doubt, because they're so conscious they want to be conscious of safeguarding. So we go round the houses to discuss what's going to happen to the land known as C. So do we have an influence? What are we trying to establish? Because the Academy have said they want to fence it all. Thank you.
Hello, John.
Yeah, thank you. I think Councillor Cole would like to come in a minute, but I think what you've just outlined is the conclusion that the officers have reached in their recommendation and their report that went to Cabinet. The Academy is established. The Academy order was granted. Effectively, what
Looks like they're on.
Okay, I would.
Right. Yeah, we're back, I believe. John, would you like to continue? Oh, sorry, hold on. Oh, what's going on? Yeah, I think we're good to go.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so I think I was making the point that the Academy order was granted last autumn. That established Ken Stimson Academy. In many respects, you know, the paper that went is finalising those arrangements and housekeeping. As I said right at the beginning, the Department for Education has determined that the land is education land. As part of the academisation process, we are required to lease it, and to enable the children to use it, it needs to be fenced.
Thank you. Any follow-up, Councillor Allen?
We can't determine, although it's education land, get that, that means it going to the academy. It's education land. Can we determine dual use? Is that within our remit? Or if not, the decision is with the academy to make a decision as to whether the neighbours, the residents can use that space. That's what I'm just trying to dig down on, if I may.
The dual use that's referred to is what is being finalised through the community use agreement.
Again, if I may, Chair, the dual use is for sports clubs to have it on a booking basis, I understand. I'm referring to public use, which it has been allowed over the years. That is now not possible with the academisation because the academy do not want public use. I mean, that's the short and long of it, really, isn't it?
Go on.
So it's not for me to speak on behalf of the trust, but what I would say is that you've heard, you know, a compelling argument from the trust today about how they plan to develop the field for a wider range of sports activity that will benefit far more many children and young people, and indeed adults, in the pursuit of a range of sport activity.
Councillor Cole, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about the academisation process. So in my professional capacity, I've taught in schools that are local authority schools, and I've taught in schools that have had to be academised because of poor Ofsted results. I believe Ken Stimson was an academisation that had to take place because of an Ofsted report. My personal preference, I think we should have more oversight of schools in terms of academies, but that's just my personal preference. That's based on previous policy that's been put through by previous governments. But I am a champion for children, both in school and those children that are out of the school. So like I said, this comes right down to the heart. We will listen and we want it back at Cabinet.
Thank you. Damien and Mike, do you wish to add anything to Councillor Allen's statement stroke question?
I think Councillor Allen actually characterised it quite correctly. The dual use is something that we would like to work on and develop alongside the community, but ad hoc access to school land with young people on it is not something that any school, local authority or academy, and I don't think it's unique to academies, would be part of their working practice for all the reasons we've discussed previously for the last number of hours.
Thank you. Councillor Hogg, please.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. I just want to explore this fence specification.
Has this question been asked?
No, it's not been asked before.
Okay, well, let me do the judge of that. You asked a question, we'll go ahead.
So it was stated earlier that the whole point of this fence was it was a continuation of the fencing that is already in existence around the school. I note that the specification for the fencing is for a 1.8 metre V style mesh fencing. What is the specification of the fencing that's currently at the school? And the reason I ask this is because the fencing that has been kind of discarded or decided that it's not up to the spec that the school requires, I believe that's over 2 metres tall. So I would be interested to know what the height of the existing fencing around the school is, and how you arrived at the specification of 1.8 metres.
So I'm colleagues at the school or school may be able to comment on how high their fence is. I don't actually know the answer to that question. That fence is it's been in situ for some years. The 1.8 was given under the advice of our Director of Planning in terms of meeting the requirements to not require planning consent, so it's within the kind of delegated authorities for planning.
Thank you.
So to there we are. We have got an admission that essentially the 1.8 metres was derived on the need not to have planning permission, and yet, as I suspect, that the height of the fence around the school is 2.4 metres. So essentially, what we're talking about is a standard fencing in order to get round the need for planning permission, and this is not about the priority being safeguarding, but just in order to be able to push this through.
Was there a question there, Councillor? Because I didn't hear it. That's more of a statement than a question.
I just want to know, is that the case? Are we essentially saying that it was 1.8 in order not to have to go through planning permission for this fence?
With the greatest respect, I don't think that's what we're saying at all.
Yeah, can I ask, please, as before, please keep it to the questions, no statements beforehand, or keep that for debate if you wish. Councillor Ray, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Very short question then. Just to confirm, this is educational land, not Ken Stimpson land. There are other educational providers around Warrington. It's not just for them. The deed does not say it belongs to Ken Stimpson. There is no entitlement to it to Ken Stimpson. It is educational, not Ken Stimpson.
The land's been determined as education land. The Academy order makes it clear that the buildings known as, at the time, Ken Stimpson Community School and the land associated with it, i.e. the playing field, should transfer to the new academy. On a lease basis, so the council remains the landowner, and it's on 125 lease to Ken Stimpson School.
I think my trustees would be incredibly disappointed if they were told the playing field that they were told at academisation was not Ken Stimpson's, because that's what we entered into.
Thank you. Councillor Skipstead, please.
Thank you. I just have a quick question. Does Ofsted require sports fields to be fenced? Thank you.
Yes, is a simple answer. In terms of they expect schools to maintain safeguarding, and during the period of transfer or change where I think the previous head made the choice, Ofsted were failing schools that were not adequately protected due to the perimeter fence. So yes, it's one of those things that has become a part of what's expected in terms of Ofsted's look at schools. And certainly when Ofsted came in the last time, there was quite a long look at the whole issue in terms of PE and its provision or lack of, because of the safeguarding issue. So I can only go what chief inspectors have said to me in various schools, and their indication is there is an expectation that young people do not come into contact with members of the public.
Cheers, Mike. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor, I didn't realise you hadn't finished questioning.
Thank you. Just in response to that, obviously we're here to work out what area is demised to the academy. I appreciate there'd be disappointment, but I think you've probably noticed there's lots of disappointment whichever decision we're going to make. The question was, you're looking to put a smaller fence in, which isn't up to the standard of the other fence. How do you safeguard children in other occasions when they walk 40 miles around Dorset, or when they go to watch Mrs Doubtfire in London? That would have been a lot of fencing, so presumably we didn't do that. You must safeguard in other ways.
I find that, quite offensive, if I'm not really honest, because that's about...
You don't need to answer that question, Mike, don't wish to.
No, but I do think you need to recognise that staff put incredible amounts of time into safeguarding children when they go to Dorset, and we cannot ask that on a daily basis. This is a man that puts his own time, and you want to make fun of it. I think that's really quite poor.
Thank you. Any further questions at all, please? Councillor Hemraj, last one.
So it's more about, you mentioned about Ofsted. When is the next Ofsted due? And if it's due soon, is it likely to fail because there's not a fence around the school? Thank you.
Ofsted is due in the next year to 18 months. The school, as many of you are aware, was under real pressure in terms of its performance, not just in PE, but across the board, in terms of governance, in terms of leadership. Under Damien's guidance, that's improved greatly. In terms of would it fail because of an non-offence, yes, if we put students on the field, which obviously at this point we don't intend to do until there is correct safeguarding in place.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Committee, for your questions. Thank you, councillors, and those members of the public who have spoken in favour of the original decision for your time. Please can I ask you that you move back to your original seats for the next agenda item. Thank you. Committee, recommendation 1 on page 13 of the agenda pack asked us to consider the response from officers to the call-in of Ken Simpson Academisation July 24 CAB 15 report, which sets out how member concerns have been addressed and also contains previously exempt financial and condition survey information. Does the committee feel that we have done that? It's better be a yes. Thank you. Right, thank you, members. We will now move to debate. At this point in the meeting, there will be no questions, I remind you, no questions at all, or statements from anyone other than the committee. Members, as the... Oh, sorry. So if we can start the debate, anyone wishes to kick it off? Councillor Hogg.
So I feel that both sides of the argument have had a good crack of being able to kind of state their case. There's been a lot of questioning. The Cabinet member has indicated that the Cabinet would welcome a return of this item back to Cabinet so that they can look at it in maybe a different way than they did the first time round, and I commend the Cabinet member for that position. I feel that maybe previous Cabinet members would not have been quite so welcoming in terms of that regard. I think that we're looking at a situation where the Academy is saying that we're denying children the space that they require, but equally it's a question of where we put this fence. Arguably, the more space that is taken over and given back to the school or more formalised to the school by putting a fence around it, you are denying the community of use of that space. And that includes children. So it's not just, just adults walking their dogs. And I think that in terms of the space itself, there's A and B do still have a reasonable amount of space for that kind of activity. But the community's been used to using this space for most people's lifetime. Is the point. It hasn't been built on. It was always, when the school was built, it was built as a community school, and that the whole ethos of shared use by the community and the school is through the DNA of the school. Evidenced by the sports centre being used by both the school and by the community. My personal preference, clearly as I called this in, is the fact that actually the Cabinet need to have a look at this and answer some of the very real questions that have been put to us by the members of our community. We should not just kind of sidestep those questions. They need to be answered head on. We need to look at, does it need 8 football pitches? Does it need 6? Does it need 4? Let's have a look at, what other academies have got in terms of their space and the use that they put that space to. I feel like that, that the assessment has been done to fill the space that's available, rather than saying, actually, you only need 4 pitches for now, but we're still keeping the other 4 pitches there as education land, so that if the academy expands in the future, there is that ability to maybe revisit this at a later stage when the academy expands, if the academy expands. So I think the recommendation should be that it goes back to Cabinet. And I think that specifically, I think they need to have a look at whether or not the 8 pitch area, and we're using the 8 pitch as a guide to the size rather than specifically saying it should be 8 football pitches. I absolutely take on board that there needs to be other provision for, you know, athletics track, and but the 8 pitch size gives people an idea as to how big this area is. Whether or not that 8 pitch is applicable, whether or not the assertion from the community is that 4 is more than enough, or whether or not there is a compromise to be had down to 6 or 5 or what have you. But the Cabinet needs to ask those questions, and I think that should be the recommendation.
Thank you. Just a reminder, we are debating. There's no recommendation at the moment, please. Councillor John Fox, please.
Yeah, thank you. I wasn't going to speak, but I think it's important. Councillor Judy Fox and myself and Councillor Lane, previous Councillor Lane, have been involved with this since 2019. We called it in to planning. We asked them to defer their decision until they looked at the option B, which was at Fox Covert. That's a long story. It's in the past. But we've never, ever once been against safeguarding. It is the most important thing there is. Despite what people may say, we cannot wait, and I agree, for an incident to happen and then take measurements. We have to do it now. One good thing about all this is, since 2019, there have been many people with many various opinions about fencing off an area of Warrington Fields for safeguarding. This is not unusual within any community, as naturally not all people are going to agree to an outcome that doesn't support their opinion. But there comes a time when we have to learn to compromise for the good of all our residents. I have to honestly say now that for the very first time, in my opinion, and despite all the different opinions and factions, they are finally speaking as one from the same book, supporting the same compromise. This makes me so very proud to be a councillor of a ward where people have finally come together, working hard to find a suitable compromise to this ongoing saga. It may not be exactly what everybody wants, but they have understood the need for a compromise for the good of all. It has been a long road, but worth the long wait, and we are so proud that our community has come together at one at last. And I ask you to listen to this compromise and put it forward back to the Cabinet.
Thank you, Councillor Fox. You said you weren't going to speak. You actually prepared something there. Councillor Blakemore-Creedon, please.
Over the past few days, I've had students X and those who are still present asking me to be their voice. Therefore, I'm going to quote what some have said to me. One states, having been deprived of these green spaces, has totally affected my youth in a way. We have not been able to take part in large team sports and events, such as Sports Day, which other schools, well, most participate in. Another student saying there is plenty of green spaces around Warrington. Actually, green spaces less than a minute away. I walk my dog on that field with my family, but we are willing to walk our dog on the other part of the fields so that I can start enjoying playing sports such as rugby, while I haven't had the chance to play. Lastly, a short response from another student whom said, I'm just glad a decision has been made. It has gone on for far too long. However, I did join Save Warrington Fields chat and scrolled back and found there were no young people talking on this matter. Therefore, why was it? Why are we only listening to one group's voice on this and not others?
Thank you, Councillor Blakemore-Creedon. Any further debate to be had, please? Councillor Ray, please.
Thank you, Chair. I was an ex-student of Ken Stimpson. We used the field. We enjoyed using the fields. They weren't fenced at the time. We didn't feel unsafe. There was an occasion that I can recall of a dog coming and joining us for a football match, and it was the highlight of the school year, talked about by everyone, about that one time that little Yorkshire Terrier come on, and unfortunately its owner whistled and it ran away far too soon. Safeguarding was a thing when I was at school. I'm not that old. And these concerns were there, but we didn't need to be fenced in. Hopefully the compromise of erecting a fence should cover this. The amount of pitches covered is a separate concern regarding what the provision can be from the school and what can be offered. But to have a fence will increase the current capacity from 0 to some. When the fields were in use, we did use a small area for our PE lessons, but with the playground, the large cage area with the pitches, the AstroTurf pitches, the tennis pitches, or tennis courts, sorry, the sports hall, the gym, the squash courts, etc., the fields weren't overly used at any one given time. But I appreciate the provision that's been offered, and that sounds amazing. I wish we had some of that provision at the time, rather than the open field, and I fully welcome the investment on that. The only time we used more than 2 or 3 pitches was sports day, when the entirety of the school staff were out on the field, and that did a lot of work on the safeguarding. And I appreciate the work that teachers put in, both in the classroom and on the extracurricular activities. And no offence was meant by the earlier comment, just that there are alternatives to physical fences. There, I've lost my place. One of the main things that made my mum put down Ken Stimpson Community School, as it was known at the time, for my secondary school options back when I was in Year 6, was the open space that it had and the fact that it was a community school. Not that it had a school field, because there's lots of schools with fields, but that it was open and it claimed to be part of the community, and this was shown. I appreciate that this has now been dropped from the name. We've taken community out of there. It's not Ken Stimpson Community Academy, it's just Ken Stimpson Academy. I appreciate that we've separated the library use and the timings. I appreciate that the sports centre and the leisure offering has now been separated too, and I understand a lot of the reasons for that. But to further remove this open space would truly stop Ken Stimpson from being part of the community that it sits within, and that it claims to be a large part of. When the fence was introduced to close off the main gate and separate the library access, I remember the amount of comments that came from myself, my peers, about the prison-like feeling. Suddenly we're fenced in, suddenly we're trapped, and we went to school in a trapped environment. Well, that didn't allow for us to run and play freely and enjoy things. We didn't run out the gates, we weren't like that, but the fact that we weren't locked in did a lot for our mental health and our well-being. Hopefully, a compromise can be achieved, and I will fully support this going back to Cabinet with a recommendation later on in the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ray. Nick Sanford, please.
Thank you. Yes, I've listened carefully to the discussion that's been had, and I've obviously asked a number of questions and got responses to those. The contribution that most impressed me was actually our new Member of Parliament, Andrew Pate, who I do actually bear in mind that he comes from the same party that who is in control of the cabinet. So I think the fact that he was making some quite challenging comments, I think, is something that we do need to take note of. But the word that he used was the word compromise, and I've noticed other people have used the word compromise also. Now, I think there's a debate to be had about where that compromise should fall. And I think one of the problems I've seen in the discussion is that people are taking very entrenched positions. You know, we represent the school, we talk for young people. I think Councillor, I think the councillor over there made a really good point. I think the voice of young people is important, and the voice of the students at the school is important, but the voice of the community is important also. And I think one of the things that we have to look at as a scrutiny committee, we obviously may want to make a recommendation about, you know, what the size of the actual area should be, but fundamentally we're concerned about process. And one of the possible grounds for calling in is that the Cabinet at their meeting of 16th of July did not adequately evaluate possible alternatives. And I've actually read carefully through the Cabinet report of the 16th of July, and it talks about different areas, but it doesn't realistically evaluate the pros and cons of them. So I think even on that single ground, there is grounds for calling it in. I do very much welcome what Councillor Coles has said. I think You know, she could have just, I know how the cabinet system works. She could have come here and said, you know, regardless of what your committee does, we're still going to bulldoze ahead with it. But she's been very clear that the cabinet is prepared to have a discussion. So I think that's positive. There's actually reference in the call-in to possibly the committee referring it to full council. I'm sure the legal officer may point this out, but that is not something that the committee is competent to actually do, because this is a decision for the cabinet. But one thing I would say to the cabinet, as we've got representatives here, is, you know, I'd ask you to consider you have the power to consult full council. Now, there's pros and cons of that, but I do think that this is specifically about Kensington School, but I do think these conflicts between community use and exclusive use by a school is going to come up in other areas. So is that something that a discussion at full council may be productive? And just one final point. I actually asked a couple of questions about Councillor Jones's interview. Now, I actually know Councillor Jones really well, and I don't think he meant to give the impression that he was predetermined on the decision. But I think what I would ask the cabinet to have a look at is the fact that there was no questioning at the meeting. That was clearly the impression that came across. So whether you look at scrapping the cabinet system and replacing it with something else, that's a matter the council will need to look at. But please, can I ask that you do have a look at your procedures, so that when you make these sort of really controversial decisions in the future, you ensure that there is some discussion, there actually is some questioning, so that people can clearly see that you are taking all factors into account, because that's legally what you are required to actually do.
Cheers, Nick. Councillor Jenkins, please.
Hi, I just wanted to make a comment, really. My throat is a bit dry, so excuse me. What we've forgotten is that everyone in this room has acknowledged that the school hasn't been using this field at all for educational purposes, even though it's been allocated for that. The public have been using it. And I feel like Cabinet, when they made their decision, forgot to take that into account. And I'm really pleased that Cabinet are deciding to take it back and have a better look and take into account the public use of the space, because that's what your job is. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Jenkins. Councillor Hemraj, please.
So my nephew and niece attended the school, and I had been advised over the last couple of days, during their time there, they've never had a sports day in that school because it's been unsafe for them. My nephew only left there 1 year ago. The voices of the students need to be heard on what they want. We also know that the students that attend the school do come across Peterborough, because my son actually visited that school 10 years ago to become a student there. We also need to take notice of the campaign of Warrington Fields and about the good plight that they have been fighting, and come to a compromise of Warrington Fields as compromised on about the 4 football pitches size. But we know that sport provisions need to be provided for the schools, because the children are so missing out on that. I actually agree that a recommendation back to the Cabinet to look at this more correctly and properly and scrutinise so a correct decision can be made. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hemraj. At the moment, I said we are just debating, no recommendation at present. Councillor Bisbee, please.
Thank you, Chair. Through you. For me, safeguarding is paramount, and I always say that no matter what, with children. Children are our future. However, they live in a community. Hopefully, we'll never get back to the stage where we've got COVID, where people needed to be outside and needed space to go into. What the members of the Academy have said is that the space would be fenced off and it wouldn't be open for general use. hopefully never ever we will get in that position of COVID again. But if by any chance there is, where would the community go? And if you're opening the school to clubs, that means everybody in the community would have to join a club. Not everybody can afford to join a club. Not everybody wants to join a club. So they'd be deprived of that. So you're depriving the community. And I can almost guarantee that many of the clubs that would be there, whether it's cricket, rugby, football, running, etc., would not be from Warrington. It would be from other areas in Peterborough and outside Peterborough as well that we would be wanting to use those things. So it wouldn't be benefiting the local community as much as I would recommend that it would be used. So for me, I'm glad that the Cabinet are going to look at it, but let's remember some people need that area for exercise, for health reasons. They don't always want to come to the school and say, well, I need to exercise, can I use your school? This is what's wrong with me. It's private. So let's look at what the whole community needs. And yes, listen to the children and young people, but let's listen to the rest of the community because they have got as much right as well to be heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Bisbee. Councillor Blakemore-Creedon, please.
I just want to go on what Councillor Ray Bisbee just said whilst debating. Warrington is a lovely area and I enjoy attending school in Warrington, and there is plenty and plenty of green space around Warrington.
Thank you, Councillor Blakemore-Creedon. Councillor Bisbee, would you like to come back on that?
I'm just thinking about people who live very close to the area and cannot actually walk or travel to other areas, so they need to have something close. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Skipstead, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to concur with some of my colleagues here in the chamber, but no one here is denying that the school should have access to these fields and be able to use them. No one has said this today. It has been used for at least 40 years by the community. If it was just an open land that was hardly used at all, and it would be a very different matter. So I think, given that the use of this land and how it's been used for such a long time, this needs to be taken into consideration. I would like the Cabinet to revisit this decision so that all voices can be heard and that the mental and physical health of the whole community and the idea of preserving green spaces of this city for the use of everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Skipstead. Anyone wish to add anything further to the debates? No, thank you very much. Members, as the debate has come to a close, please can I remind everyone that a call-in should only be used in exceptional circumstances where members of a scrutiny committee have evidence which suggests that the executive did not take decisions in accordance with the principles set out in Part 2, Article 11, decision-making of the Council's Constitution. After considering requests and responses to call-in, we have the following options outlined in recommendation 2 on page 13 of the agenda pack. Now, we can either decide to take no further action in relation to the Cabinet decision Ken Stimpson Academisation July 24 CAB 15, in which case the original executive decision will be effective immediately, or decide to refer the decision back to Cabinet for reconsideration, setting out in writing the nature of its concerns and any alternative recommendations. Does any member of the committee wish to put forward a recommendation, please? Councillor Ray, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to put forward this recommendation, well aware of the fact that the decision-making powers remain with the Cabinet and that ultimately it will need to be a Cabinet decision. My recommendation is that Cabinet refer this item to full Council to get the views of members, allowing time for sufficient public consultation with the community and with all age groups as its members' opportunity and role to represent. And then for Council to make 2 recommendations back to Cabinet for final decisions. The first surrounding the amount of land to be included in the lease to Ken Stimpson Academy, and the second to be regarding the amount of open space, if any, that the Council will fence off from public access, along with the specific requirements of the fence for safeguarding purposes.
Thank you. Neil, you wish to come on this?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can I just deal with the reference has been made to referring this to full Council, and And if I could just be really clear with the committee what I think is permissible and what isn't, because as the Chair has already pointed out, once you've considered all the issues, really the decisions are for the committee to decide to take no further action or refer the matter back to Cabinet for reconsideration, and you can set out the nature of your concerns and the alternative recommendations. It's only in circumstances where the decision falls outside the Council's policy and budget framework set by Council that the committee could sorry, sorry, I've got accompaniment. It's only if it fell outside the Council's budget and policy framework that it would refer the matter to Council, and I have to say, even then, it would be subject to the advice of the monitoring officer and the Section 151 officer, and I think it's unlikely that the committee could reasonably conclude that this is a decision that falls into that area. It was funded within the budget envelope that was approved by Council, and obviously the Section 151 officer's view would be important, but for my part, that would be my view. And in any event, I think in those circumstances, it's worth remembering that the powers available to Council at that point are not to substitute its own view. They are to effectively do the work of the Scrutiny Committee. So with that preamble, I think the question about what Cabinet ultimately do in terms of referring matters to Council are matters for the Cabinet to decide, and the committee might want to indicate that. I think we'd need to be careful about elegant variations that work around the rules set out in the Constitution that I've just described, because the Council has chosen a model of governance based on a leader and executive approach. This is an executive decision that falls within the authority set out in the Constitution, and the Constitution is really clear that if a decision relates to an executive function, only the Cabinet can ultimately decide that matter. So for all those reasons, I would just urge the committee to just bear those in mind when formulating its recommendations, because I'm not convinced that this is I'm certainly not convinced that this is a decision for full Council. The Constitution doesn't really provide for Cabinet going to Council for a steer or review. I think there might be other ways of achieving the desired result that you've asked for around recommendations. The need to just reconsider points that the committee have had. I think that's really how scrutiny works, and I'd just be a little bit cautious about the recommendation that sort of works its way around and effectively tries to push things to Council, which ordinarily wouldn't go there. But that's my view. Thank you.
So, Chair, if you're happy for me to just respond, because I think I've addressed a number of those points in firstly saying that I appreciate it's an executive decision, so full Council do not have those decision-making powers. They would then have to recommend back. There is precedent on a number of occasions where full Council has been gone to for scrutiny of all members on things that have large impacts to communities or to citywide events. So there is precedent for this. Likewise, we're not sending it to Council. We are recommending that Cabinet do that. If Cabinet choose not to send it to full Council because they don't want the views of all members and citywide participation and consultation, that's a matter for the Cabinet, and they can refuse the recommendation, as they can any recommendation that we make today.
Thank you. Councillor Hemraj? Right, sorry. Right, so we've got Councillor Ray's recommendation. Is there a second for that recommendation? I've got Councillor Ormston went first. Sorry, Councillor Ray.
Happy to second.
It's just vote, is it? Right, can we go to the vote on the recommendation from Councillor Ray, please?
Could we just have the final wording of that recommendation, please? Thank you.
So the recommendation is that Cabinet refer this item to full Council to get the views of members, allowing time for sufficient public consultation, and for Council to then make two recommendations back to Cabinet. The first surrounding the amount of land to be included in the lease to Kensington Academy, and the second to be regarding the amount of open space, if any, that the Council itself will fence off from public access, along with the specific requirements of the fence for safeguarding purposes.
Thank you. Are we all in favour of that? Yep. So can you raise... Sorry. All in favour, could you raise green cards, please? unanimous. Thank you very much, everyone. We're done. Apologies for the confusion there. Thank you very much. So that concludes the meeting. Can I just remind everyone, though, please, that this is a process we have to go through to get to the right decision for everyone. Via social media, there's been a lot of abuse thrown around and threats being made. Could I please ask people to refrain from that, because it helps no one at all and it does put people in horrible circumstances. Thank you very much.